Chapter 628. The Tuoba country was neither big nor small. It was about twice the size of the Zhulu country. It was not very strong among the 6 countries of the western region. It was at a level where it was not very strong. The Tuoba country had a good relationship with the Starfall dynasty. It was almost to the point of becoming a vassal. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were servile. In the past few days, the Tuoba royal city was unusually lively. Everywhere was filled with a festive atmosphere because the Starfall dynasty's delegation to the Thunderblaze dynasty had arrived. Not only that, the Starfall dynasty's delegation was not only going to celebrate Lei Qingjuan's birthday, but they also sent a prince to the Tuoba country for a marriage alliance. And this prince was the crown prince. The current emperor of the Starfall dynasty was in the prime of his life. His throne was stable, and the princes under him were relatively harmonious, at least on the surface. The crown prince's name was xuanhuan. He was the eldest son of the Starfall dynasty's royal family. After he came of age, he entered the Eastern Palace. Unfortunately, xuanhuan was born a little impulsive and was not shrewd enough. Although he was somewhat intelligent, he was far from enough to be the Eastern Palace's master or the future emperor. Therefore, there were many people who secretly coveted his position as the Eastern Palace's master. xuanhuan was also aware of his shortcomings. However, his character was still innate. He wanted to change, but it was very difficult. However, he was indeed working hard to change. This mission to the Thunderblaze dynasty was snatched by him. The Starfall dynasty could be said to be the strongest dynasty in the world. As the crown prince, he was definitely qualified to celebrate Lei Qingjuan's birthday. Moreover, this trip could also show the Starfall dynasty's strength. It was a good opportunity to gain a lot of fame. Originally, everything should have gone smoothly. However, someone secretly hindered him. At the same time, they wanted him to marry the Tuoba country's princess. A princess and a prince, it sounded like a good match. However, the Tuoba country was a small country. The princess's status was not even comparable to some of the young ladies of the Starfall dynasty's nobles' families. Especially for xuanhuan, the crown prince's consort was a very important way for him to strengthen his power. If the Tuoba country's princess really became the crown prince's consort, he would suffer a great loss. On the other hand, to the Tuoba kingdom, this was an enormously joyous occasion. With this, they could be said to have completely hugged the thighs of the Starfall dynasty. Right now, the entire country was celebrating. Thus, there was a festive atmosphere everywhere. At this time, Leng Shiqi was disguised as a person from the 6 kingdoms of the western region. He was on the streets asking for all kinds of information. After he learned about this, he was moved. This might be a good breakthrough. Late at night, the diplomatic group of the Starfall dynasty and the upper echelons of the Tuoba kingdom were gathered in the Tuoba kingdom's royal palace. They were all drinking and chatting merrily. The atmosphere was very lively. The king of Tuoba country, Tuoba Chi, said warmly to the jade-faced youth beside him, "Your Highness, you and I are going to be a family in the future. This time we will be staying in Tuoba country for a while. This prince must treat your Highness well so that you can have more contact with my daughter." The young man was none other than the crown prince of the Starfall dynasty, xuanhuan. He smiled stiffly and said, "King Tuoba is right. I agree. It's a pity that I still have to make a trip to the Thunderfire dynasty. Considering the distance, I don't have much time." "Aha, you're right. Tuoba Chi drank a cup of wine and said with a smile, "Then let's talk about it when your Highness returns. When that time comes, this diplomatic group will become a bridal party." xuanhuan seemed to be a little unaccustomed to Tuoba Chi's enthusiasm. He could only smile perfunctorily. It was not until late at night that he finally got away and returned to the post house. However, what he did not know was that an inconspicuous bug had quietly flown into the royal palace's banquet. There were countless experts in the royal palace. For example, King Tuoba and Crown Prince xuanhuan were guarded by experts of the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, no one had discovered the bug. And this bug was the Gu King. After the Gu King had advanced, it had an extremely strong ability to hide. Under normal circumstances, even experts of the oneness of heaven and man realm could not find its trace. After the banquet was over, the Gu King flew back to Leng Shiqi and told him everything it had heard. In fact, there was not much valuable information at the banquet. As for xuanhuan's dissatisfaction with the marriage, it was expected. Therefore, Leng Shiqi continued to order the Gu King to follow xuanhuan. After leaving the royal palace, xuanhuan returned to the post house with an annoyed and gloomy face. As soon as he returned to his room, he shouted, "What the hell? Princess of the Tuoba kingdom? I don't care at all. I don't know who gave my father this rotten idea. If I find out who it is, I'll definitely teach him a lesson. A little eunuch beside him immediately said, Your Highness, be careful of your words. Walls have ears. However, Yuan became even more impatient. Be careful of this and that. Don't even dare to breathe loudly. Now I can't even speak? Although he said so, he knew in his heart that he had indeed made a slip of the tongue. Whether those words were passed to Tuobachi or his father, it would be extremely disadvantageous for him. Therefore he obediently shut his mouth. After a short while, he seemed to have calmed down and said, Little Yen, do you think I still have a chance to turn the tables? The little eunuch Little Yen said, This I can't say for sure. After all, His Majesty has already given the order. No one dares to go against it. Even if your Highness takes the princess of the Tuoba kingdom as your concubine, I'm afraid you'll be caught and bitten to death. Yuan suddenly waved his hand impatiently. Forget it. Go and get those people for me. Little Yan's expression froze. Then he hesitated. Your Highness, those people's identities are too sensitive. If others know, they'll become the spearhead to attack your Highness. Your Highness, listen to my advice. It's better to cut ties with them. Yuan sighed. How can I not know what you're saying? However, I have too little power at my disposal. I can only use them to attack the Thunderfire dynasty. Even if they have their own goals, I have no other choice. Go. Yes. Little Yenzi also sighed softly and left. Soon 5 people walked in. They were all dressed in black and had expressionless faces. In the middle of the night they looked a bit like corpses. Strange. Leng Shichi was surprised to see the 5 people through the supercilious eyes. He was immediately puzzled because he felt a faint trace of death aura from them. To be more precise, it was the kind of death aura that only corpses would emit. Because Leng Shichi controlled the underworld, he was extremely sensitive to this kind of aura. Therefore, even if those people used a special secret technique to conceal their aura, Leng Shichi still sensed it. Moreover, this aura gave him a sense of déjà vu. Leng Shichi frowned and thought for a while. Then he suddenly flipped through his mustard seed bracelet and took out a thick, dark zombie arm. Chapter 629. This zombie arm was obtained by Leng Shichi a long time ago after the collapse of the Mirage Spirit secret realm. In Leng Shichi's eyes, this item was of a lower level. There were a few times when he wanted to throw this item to the system for recycling, but because he had never seen anything like it again, he felt that it was quite rare, so he kept it. However, after the Mirage Spirit secret realm, he had never met a demonic cultivator who cultivated this kind of secret technique. He did not expect to meet one in the Tuoba country today. Moreover, these people clearly came with Yuan, so they must be from the Starfall dynasty. Inside the hostel, Yuan was entertaining the 5 demonic cultivators. He said to the leader of the group, Yuanji, the reason why the 5 of you were able to escape and survive until now is all because of me. Now I have a request. Yuanji looked quite old, but the skin on his face was relatively smooth. However, his eyes were cloudy and deep. He said, We have already agreed to sneak into the Thunderfire dynasty, Your Highness. This is the condition that we have agreed on long ago. Yuan sneered and said, What? The 5 of you have saved your lives and taken so many resources from me. Now, you are not even willing to help me with a small matter? Moreover, it is just a small matter. I want you to turn that princess into a retard. I believe that you can do it with your means, right? Yuanji was silent for a few breaths with an expressionless face and said, Yes, we can. However, there are many experts in the Tuoba country. It is inevitable that we will be found out. Moreover, he looked at Yuan deeply and continued, Your Highness has just arrived and something happened to the princess. This is too much of a coincidence. What he meant was that Yuan was too impulsive. Once this matter was out, everyone would think that Yuan did it. What good would it do him? Yuan said indifferently, So what if they know? As long as there is no evidence, no one will dare to question me directly. Moreover, we're going to the Thunderfire dynasty soon. Do they dare to stop me? His words were full of confidence. This was the confidence that the powerful Starfall dynasty gave him. Indeed, even if others knew that he was the one who did it secretly, so what? What would they dare to do? Would they fall out with the Starfall dynasty because of this? Yuan was sure that the kingdom of Tuoba would not dare to do so. As long as something happened to the princess, no one would be able to force him to marry an idiot to be the crown princess. That would be a disgrace to the imperial family. In this way his worries would be resolved. However, Yuanji still refused to budge as if he was still hesitating. Yuan immediately pulled a long face and said in a deep voice, The 5 of you, don't forget your identities. You are fish that escaped the net of the corpse puppet sect. If others find out about this, think about what will happen to you. At this point, a deep gloom flashed in Yuanji's eyes. Finally he nodded. We can help your highness this time, but the consequences have nothing to do with us. Of course. If anything happens, I'll take care of it, Ying Yuan said with a smile. Then they left and Leng Shiqi ordered the Gu King to come back. After the Gu King came back and told him all the information, Leng Shiqi could not help but be shocked. It turned out that the 5 of them wanted to sneak into the Thunderblaze dynasty. At this moment he was glad that he came personally. Otherwise, with Ying Yuan, the Starfall dynasty's crown prince, covering for them, the 5 devil cultivators would most likely be brought into the Thunderblaze dynasty. Although Leng Shiqi did not know what they would do in the future, it would definitely be unfavorable to the Thunderblaze dynasty. Therefore he had to think of a way to get rid of the 5 of them. What made him even more surprised was that they were actually from the Corpse Puppet sect. Leng Shiqi had heard of the Corpse Puppet sect before. He had inadvertently seen it in the Dark Thunder Guard's information vault. The Corpse Puppet sect was once an extremely glorious sect. 100 years ago, it was ranked in the 6 paths demon realm of the world sects. The sect's biggest specialty was the refining of corpses. The disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect used the corpses of spirit cultivators to refine them into puppet-like existences. Furthermore, they could retain a large portion of the deceased's cultivation and spirit techniques. They only needed to control the refined corpses to fight with others. This was similar to the Imperial Beast Abode and the Blood Beast sect. The difference was that the disciples of the Imperial Beast Abode and the Blood Beast sect could only control one demon beast. After all, the demon beasts were carefully cultivated by the disciples. However, the most terrifying thing about the Corpse Puppet sect was that they could control multiple refined corpses at the same time. Therefore, the disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect were almost invincible in the same realm. Originally, the Corpse Puppet sect wanted to be the head of the 6 paths demon realm. However, the problem was that the disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect were getting more and more arrogant. One must know that the strength of the refined corpse was closely related to the spirit cultivator's cultivation and the strength of the body. As the Corpse Puppet sect disciples' cultivation increased, they naturally needed to refine better refined corpses. However, where could they find so many high-level spirit cultivator corpses for them to refine? Therefore, the disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect gradually started to covet the corpses of the deceased experts in the various sects, especially a few slightly stronger sects. In order to show respect to their ancestors, they would normally use secret techniques to preserve their ancestors' corpses. This caused the Corpse Puppet sect to remember. At the start, the Corpse Puppet sect was very secretive and was not discovered. However, if one often walked by the river, how could one not wet their shoes? In the end, they still exposed a flaw. At this moment, all the sects and aristocratic families realized that their ancestors' graves had been dug up. The Corpse Puppet sect instantly became the target of public criticism. Within the Starfall dynasty, there were close to 100 sects and forces that joined forces to attack the Corpse Puppet sect. Originally, everyone thought that this was a battle without any suspense, even if the Corpse Puppet sect was one of the top sects in the 6 paths demon realm. However, no one would have thought that the Corpse Puppet sect had accumulated a large amount of powerful refined corpses over a long period of time. They actually used their own strength to resist the attacks of over 100 sects. In the end, it even attracted over 10 Sky Origin Realm experts to take action before the Corpse Puppet sect was destroyed. Since then, the Corpse Puppet sect had become a taboo in the Starfall dynasty. Anyone who had a certain relationship with the Corpse Puppet sect was exterminated. For over 100 years, the Corpse Puppet sect had also disappeared without a trace. However, the Corpse Puppet sect was located within the Starfall dynasty. Therefore, generally speaking, the people of the Thunderblaze dynasty had never heard of this name. I didn't expect that the 5 demonic cultivators were actually from the Corpse Puppet sect. No wonder others didn't recognize their master. It turns out that they were from the Starfall dynasty. Leng Shiqi muttered. However, he couldn't help but have some doubts in his heart. Could it be that they had traveled through countless miles to Donglin County just for the 1,000-year-old Black Fiend demon corpse? They probably had other goals. Unfortunately, they died in the hands of Leng Shiqi before they could accomplish their goal. This Corpse Puppet sect seems to have revived from the ashes. This Crown Prince Ying Yuan has guts. He even dares to use the Corpse Puppet sect. However, this is also a good opportunity for me. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed. He had already thought of a way to sow discord between the Tuoba country and the Starfall dynasty. Chapter 630. Yuan Ji and the other 4 demonic cultivators quietly left the inn under the cover of the night. One of them asked in a low voice, "Brother Yuan, Are we really going to intervene in Yuan's private affairs? Moreover, this is related to the Starfall dynasty in the Tuoba kingdom. If something happens, it's hard to guarantee that Yuan won't push us out as scapegoats. How could I not know what you're saying? Yuanji also sighed slightly and said, people have to bow their heads under the eaves. Now we have to rely on Yuan to escape the pursuit of the Starfall dynasty's enemies. Bear with it. When we reach the Thunderflame dynasty, we'll be free to fly. But that princess lives in the palace, surrounded by experts like clouds. How should we do it? I've already thought about it. Let's do this. In the middle of the night, the palace had gradually quieted down. However, one of the courtyards in the imperial harem was still brightly lit. A haggard young girl sat in the room. She was Princess Xianxia, who was about to marry Yuan. Princess, it's time to sleep. The maid beside her bowed and said. However, Princess Xianxia acted as if she didn't hear it. She still sat there as if in a daze. At this moment, the maid and the guards outside the door didn't notice that a strange figure was lying on the roof of the room. Looking from afar, the figure blended into the night and avoided all the guards in the harem. Looking carefully, the figure was still twitching slightly. Every time it twitched, a wisp of invisible black gas would seep into the room and enter Princess Xianxia's forehead. As time passed, the look in Princess Xianxia's eyes became dimmer and dimmer. She also became somewhat dull. Gradually, the maid also realized that something was wrong. She reached out and gently touched Princess Xianxia. Who would have thought that the princess would directly collapse? Her eyes were still wide open, but there wasn't a trace of spirit in them. The maid immediately cried out in alarm, "Your Highness!" Her cry immediately attracted the guards at the door. They suddenly rushed in and saw Princess Xianxia's strange appearance. One of them immediately shouted, "Quick, call the imperial doctor." The entire courtyard was thrown into chaos, but none of them noticed that the strange figure lying on the roof had disappeared. In a dark corner at the side of the palace, Yuanji's group of 5 stood there. Yuanji's 10 fingers were trembling non-stop, as if he was fiddling with something. After a while, a black shadow flitted across the palace walls and came to his side. How smooth. I didn't expect that none of the guards in the palace would notice the Li poison-refined corpse. The small Tuoba kingdom's imperial palace is just a bunch of useless people. Yuanji nodded and said, the concealment ability of the Li poison-refined corpse isn't bad, but if those Unity of Heaven realm experts were a little more attentive, they might have discovered it. As expected, it's somewhat useless. However, this is also good. At least we have dealt with Yuan. As for whether or not the princess can be cured of the corpse poison, it will depend on their own abilities. However, the 5 of them didn't notice that when the poison-refining corpse left the palace, a small bug flew out from its body. They also didn't know that there was someone watching them from a few miles away. This person stretched out a finger, and the Gu King obediently landed on it. This person was naturally Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi smiled quietly and said, it's easier said than done for a merely poison-refined corpse to hide from a few great experts of the Union of Heaven and Man realm. It's all thanks to Gu King's help to conceal its aura. You did well. He lightly tapped the Gu King's head, and the Gu King immediately wriggled intimately. Thank you, master. You go and rest first. Lung Shiqi put the Gu King back into the pet space and then waved his hand. A faint yin wind suddenly appeared beside him, and a figure that others couldn't see was already standing beside him. To be more precise, it was a ghost figure. That was Lung Shiqi's ghost slave, Li Gue. Li Gue could leave the mansion of the dead, but he couldn't stay in the outside world for too long, and couldn't be too far away from Lung Shiqi. After he said a few words to Li Gue's figure moved and quickly floated away. Lung Shiqi slowly followed behind. At the same time, Yuanji and the others had just started to leave the vicinity of the palace, but they didn't walk for long before Yuanji's footsteps suddenly stopped. His expression stiffened for a moment, but it immediately turned into a look of pleasant surprise. The other 4 demonic cultivators had the same expression, and one of them said, Big brother, did you feel it? I felt it. It's an extremely pure ghost aura. To be able to give birth to this level of ghost aura, it's definitely a demonic corpse that's over thousands of years old. Yuanji said with a bit of joy. For disciples of the corpse puppet cult, there was nothing more attractive than powerful corpses. At the same time, they were very sensitive to the aura of various corpses and spirits. It ran away, quickly chase it. Yuanji couldn't completely lock onto the location of the ghost aura, so he immediately led the others to chase in the general direction. In reality, they were chasing after Li Gue. Li Gue was a ghost slave transformed by Lung Shiqi after Li Zhangtao's soul drank Granny Meng's soup. From a certain point of view, It was a real ghost, so of course it had an extremely pure ghost aura. Lung Shiqi thought of the 1,000-year-old evil corpse he encountered in the tomb of Marquis Boiwanhu in Donglin County. That evil corpse also gave birth to a demonic spirit, so he made Yuan Ji and the others think that Li Gui was a demonic spirit born from a powerful corpse, so he led them to a place. Li Gui was invisible and intangible. Even if Yuan Ji and the others were good at capturing aura, it was difficult to catch Li Gui in a short time. They didn't notice that the surrounding houses were getting fewer and fewer, and it became a little desolate. In the middle of the night there were many guards patrolling, but Yuan Ji and the others paid too much attention to Li Gui, so they easily avoided all the guards with the cultivation of Gang Spirit Realm and chased after Li Gui. They didn't stop until they came to a silent, solemn and somewhat gloomy place, and Li Gui's aura suddenly disappeared at this time. Yuan Ji and the other four released black qi at the same time to cover their bodies. Yuan Ji said in a low voice, "This seems to be the royal mausoleum of Tuoba country. They actually built the royal mausoleum in the royal city. Aren't they afraid of the feng shui? There must be masters guarding the royal mausoleum. What should we do?" Yuan Ji thought for a moment and said, "The aura just now must be a spirit born from the corpse of an ancestor of Tuoba country. You can imagine how precious the corpse is to be able to give birth to such a spirit. We can't give up such a good opportunity. We have to go in and explore. Even if we are discovered, Ying Yuan will help us. What are we afraid of? Let's go." Lung Shiqi, who was hiding in the dark, saw Yuan Ji and the others sneak into the royal mausoleum quietly. He smiled gently. The fish had taken the bait. P.S. The recommendation algorithm of Qidian has been changed recently, which is very unfavorable for old writers like us who earn more than 1 million yuan. Our income in recent days is not as much as what we earned in one day. The author was very helpless. Although it was a part-time job, the sudden decrease in income was too much of a blow. Recently, my condition was also very bad. I planned to save up some manuscripts during National Day, but I couldn't write anything. But as long as there are people reading, I will definitely persist in finishing the book, and the subsequent plot will be faster. I will start a new book when I finish the book with more than 2 million words. Finally, I would like to thank the book friends who have been supporting the author. This paragraph is not counted as a starting point coin. Chapter 631. At this moment, in the palace, a few imperial physicians were jogging towards the princess courtyard. The one who was running at the back was probably older. He was sweating profusely and panting. As he was running, a 9-colored light suddenly flashed across his eyes. The light was just a flash and he did not show any signs of abnormality. Therefore no one noticed it. Not long after, Tuoba King Tuoba Chi arrived at the princess room. A few imperial physicians were treating the princess with sweat all over their foreheads. Tuoba Chi kept pacing back and forth. His face was filled with anxiety. He had always doted on his daughter. She was going to marry into the Starfall dynasty. Nothing must happen to her. If the princess could not marry Ying Yuan, not only would the kingdom of Tuoba lose the protection of the Starfall dynasty, but they would also offend the Starfall dynasty. The consequences would be unimaginable. You've been looking at her for a long time. Tell me what's wrong with the princess? Tuoba King asked anxiously. One of the imperial physicians wiped the sweat off his forehead and answered, "Your Majesty, from what I can see, the princess is not sick. It's just that there seems to be a weak and strange aura in her body. If we can't force that aura out, no matter how good the medicine is, it will be useless." Tuoba Chi's expression turned serious. The princess was not sick. Someone had done something to her. Thinking of this, things became complicated. "Tuoba Hui, come and take a look," he said to a tall person beside him. This person was the commander of the palace's imperial guards. He had the cultivation of the unity of heaven and man realm. Tuoba Hui's expression did not look good. If the princess was really done to secretly do something to her, no matter who did it, he would not be able to escape from the crime of negligence. He walked to the princess with a gloomy face. He was a man and a woman. He injected a few streams of spiritual energy into the princess' body. After a short while, the princess' face turned slightly black, and her eyes became even more lifeless. Tuoba Hui's expression turned dark as well. He realized that there was indeed a black aura in the princess' body. That black aura had absorbed the spiritual energy that he injected into her body and became even denser. He had never encountered such a situation before. If he was asked to fight, he would have no problem. However, when he encountered these things with strange auras, he was somewhat at a loss. He could only helplessly say, "Your Majesty, there is indeed a wisp of black energy within Her Royal Highness' body causing mischief." The most troublesome thing is that the black energy is currently corroding Her Royal Highness' mind. Furthermore, it can also devour external spiritual energy. Normal methods are useless against it. It is truly vicious to the extreme. Who is it? Who is it? Tuoba Chi couldn't help but shout when he heard this. He was even more furious. He was furious that the imperial guards and imperial physicians under him were all useless. They didn't even notice that someone had snuck into the harem. Now that the princess was in trouble, they couldn't even save her. What was the use of having them? However, Tuoba Chi had not completely lost his mind. Even if he killed all those people now, it would be useless. The most important thing now was to treat the princess. He immediately said, "No matter what method you use, you must cure the princess. All the resources in the national treasury are at your disposal. If you need any medicinal herbs, I will go and find them. If you can't cure the princess before Crown Prince Xuanhuan comes to pick her up, humph." Although he didn't make it clear, everyone knew what he meant. Everyone shuddered in their hearts. At this moment, the old imperial physician said in surprise, "Your Majesty, I think the princess seems to be poisoned." With this new discovery, King Tuoba immediately asked, "What did you see? Just tell me." "Your Majesty, normal poisons have the ability to corrode the body. However, this poison is corroding Her Royal Highness' mind. I also sensed a certain amount of corpse energy from the black energy. Therefore, I think this poison might have come from—" He stopped talking at this point. King Tuoba waved his hand and said anxiously, "Why are you still keeping us in suspense? Hurry up and say it." "Yes, I am quite knowledgeable, so I know a little more. This poison seems to be a corpse poison that the corpse puppet sect of the Starfall dynasty is proficient in using," the imperial physician said in a low voice. Starfall dynasty. Corpse puppet sect. Hearing these two names, everyone present fell silent. The kingdom of Tuoba and the Starfall dynasty were neighbors. Naturally, they had heard of the corpse puppet sect. However, this sect had been destroyed for hundreds of years. Why would it suddenly appear now? Why would it sneak into the palace and attack the princess? Even if it was really the corpse puppet sect, what was their motive? Questions appeared in everyone's mind. King Tuoba turned his head and asked, "Are you sure?" The imperial physician bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I am only guessing. I don't have any evidence. However, there is at least a 50% possibility. Regardless of whether it is the corpse puppet sect or not, do you think there is a way to save the princess?" King Tuoba was most concerned about the princess' safety. Normal methods won't work. The only method I know is to find someone who has cultivated a technique that can restrain the corpse energy to force the black energy out of the princess. I can't think of anything else. There was a way, but what kind of technique could restrain the corpse energy? Where could they find someone at this time? Even if there was such a person in the palace, there was no guarantee that he could save the princess. Then what kind of technique can restrain the corpse poison? Metal element? Fire element or something else? King Tuoba's cultivation was not high, so he was not very clear about this. The imperial physician said, "A metal element technique can be used. However, it would be best if it is a yang element technique." King Tuoba was about to give the order to find someone, but at this moment, an ear-piercing sound suddenly pierced through the night sky. Many experts looked up and saw an arrow that looked like a stream of light shooting straight towards King Tuoba. "How dare you!" Tuoba Hui snorted coldly and opened one of his hands. A giant blue hand appeared in the air and easily caught the arrow. Tuoba Hui picked up the arrow and realized that it was not an arrow. It was obviously a very ordinary tree branch. A small tree branch could have such terrifying destructive power. The person who shot it was definitely not ordinary. "How dare you? How dare you? Do you think you can come and go as you please in the Tuoba palace?" King Tuoba was furious. First, the princess was harmed. Now, someone dared to openly assassinate him. He was about to explode. However, Tuoba Hui said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. I don't think this person is here to assassinate you." "What?" King Tuoba frowned. The attack just now was indeed powerful. However, it was still within the range of the gang spirit realm. With Your Majesty around, even if the attack was 10 times stronger, it would not hurt Your Majesty. Therefore, I don't think the person wants to assassinate Your Majesty. He has other reasons. Tuoba Hui checked the tree branch in his hand as he spoke. Tuoba Hui found a note in the tree branch unexpectedly. After reading it, his eyes suddenly widened and then he hurriedly handed it to King Tuoba. King Tuoba was shocked when he saw the words. His expression changed and his eyes were filled with surprise. Then he shouted, "Summon some experts to protect the princess immediately. The rest of you go to the royal tomb." Everyone was stunned. They had just found some clues about the princess's condition. Shouldn't they go to find the right person to save the princess first? Why did they suddenly go to the royal tomb? However, since it was the king's order, they did not dare to disobey. Immediately, only a few imperial physicians were left to take care of the princess. The rest of them all hurried to the royal tomb with the king. Because there was only one line on the note, someone dug up your ancestral tomb. Chapter 632. The royal mausoleum was a place where the Tuoba kingdom's royal family was enshrined. To the Tuoba kingdom, it was sacred and inviolable. Especially when the body of the first king was actually in there. It was enshrined by tens of thousands of people. It was a place that could not be lost. Regardless of the intentions of the person who shot the arrow and whether this was true or not, Tuoba had to confirm it. Although the princess's poison was important, it was not like there was no way around it. Even if he was anxious, it was useless. If something really happened to the royal mausoleum, not only would the Tuoba kingdom's reputation be ruined, but he would also be too ashamed to face his ancestors in the future. Furthermore, Tuoba was not afraid that this was a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. After all, this was the royal palace and there were many experts. There were also experts from the Hall of Enshrining, so there was no need to worry. A group of experts from the royal palace hurried towards the royal mausoleum. There was a large group of imperial guards following behind them. Such a big commotion naturally attracted the attention of others, such as Crown Prince Xuanhuan. The Starfall dynasty's diplomatic group staying in the post house also noticed the commotion outside. Xuanhuan immediately called someone over and asked, "What happened outside?" "Your Highness, we are not very sure. We only saw the Tuoba king leading a large group of experts out in a hurry. From the looks of it, they are heading towards the north of the city." "What are they going to do with such a large group of people?" "North of the city? What's in the north of the city?" Xuanhuan was also very confused. He shouted, "Let's go and take a look." Originally, this matter had nothing to do with him. However, he thought about it again. Not long ago, he had sent Xuanji and the others to attack the princess. Now that they had not returned, he did not know what the result was. Now that the people from the Tuoba kingdom were moving out with so many experts, there might be some connection between the two. This made him feel uneasy. He had to go and take a look. Inside the royal mausoleum, Xuanji and the others actually managed to sneak in without being detected by the experts guarding the royal mausoleum. They found an incomparably gorgeous coffin in the centermost position. Their faces were all filled with greed. This was because they could all feel an extremely strong corpse aura from this coffin. The corpse inside was not only well preserved, it must have been a supreme expert in the world when it was alive. Moreover, this corpse was placed in the king's city and was worshipped by tens of thousands of people in the Tuoba country, who knew how it had evolved. It was normal for it to have a spirit body. If they could obtain this corpse and refine it into a refined corpse, then they could do whatever they wanted. They wouldn't even care about the unity of heaven and man realm. However, Xuanji and the others did not act rashly, because this coffin must be protected by a formation. It was not easy for them to sneak in here. If they made any noise, even if it was just a little bit, they would immediately be discovered. Xuanji transmitted his voice to the others. "Let's set up an isolation formation first, then think of a way to open the coffin." The other four nodded silently. They knew that they couldn't act too hastily. Otherwise, not only would they fail at the last step, they might not even be able to keep their lives. In fact, other than the five of them, there was another person who had snuck into the royal tomb, and that was Leng Shiqi. At this moment, Leng Shiqi concealed himself and stood in a corner of the royal tomb. The Gu King was lying on his shoulder, and it was breathing in and out a layer of faint fog, completely isolating their aura. Leng Shiqi looked at Xuanji and the others sneakily setting up the formation. He originally wanted to wait for King Tuoba and the other experts to arrive before making a noise to expose Xuanji and the others. However, he suddenly changed his mind. He thought to himself, looking at Xuanji and the others, it seems that they do have a way to open the coffin. Perhaps there are some treasures inside. He also had his eyes on the treasures in the coffin. Not long after, Xuanji used some unknown method to quietly open the coffin. Lying inside was a corpse in a yellow robe. This corpse had been dead for many years, but its appearance was still very well preserved, as if it had just died not long ago. The only strange thing was that half of the corpse was filled with a terrifying ghost aura, while the other half had a layer of faint golden light. The aura was very mysterious and no one knew what it was. Xuanji and the others didn't dare to speak, but Leng Shiqi could see the shock and surprise in their eyes. Therefore, this corpse must have something extraordinary about it. At this moment, King Tuoba and the experts from the palace were about to arrive. Lung Shichi suppressed the doubts in his heart and prepared to take action at any time to attract everyone's attention. When King Tuoba and the others arrived at the royal tomb, they found that it was as calm as usual, and there seemed to be no problem at all. When everyone arrived, a spirit cultivator of the unity of heaven and man realm walked out of the royal tomb. This person was the guardian of the royal tomb. He bowed and said, "Tuoba Chin greets your majesty. Dispense with the formalities. Let me ask you, is there anything unusual in the royal tomb?" King Tuoba asked directly. Tuoba Chin shook his head and said, "There is nothing unusual." Hearing this, King Tuoba's expression froze. Was this really a diversion? Just as he was puzzled, a roar that was neither human nor beast could be heard, and the direction of this roar was actually the royal tomb. Immediately after, everyone felt waves of spirit energy and traces of corpse aura. Indeed, someone sneaked into the royal tomb. This is outrageous. King Tuoba shouted angrily, "What are you all standing there for? No matter who is inside, they must be cut into pieces." The experts from the palace all rushed out like arrows. Only Tuoba Hui and Tuoba Chin did not move. Tuoba Hui had to protect King Tuoba. If even he left, what would happen if someone tried to assassinate the king? Tuoba Chin frowned. He had been guarding the royal tomb for a long time. Although he couldn't sense the entire royal tomb at all times, ordinary people couldn't easily hide from him and enter the royal tomb. Now it seemed that someone had indeed entered the royal tomb. This was his dereliction of duty. What was even more troublesome was that King Tuoba actually knew about it earlier than him. This time, no matter who broke into the royal tomb, no matter what they did inside after this matter was over, they would definitely be severely punished by the king. Therefore he had to work hard now. It would be best if he could capture the intruder alive. He might even be able to atone for his crimes. Tuoba Chin lowered his head and said, "Rest assured, your majesty. I will definitely capture the thief." After saying that, he turned into a phantom and rushed into the royal tomb. After a few breaths, the royal tomb suddenly exploded with intense light and explosions. King Tuoba could only stand there anxiously. On one hand, he hoped to capture the thief. On the other hand, he hoped that they would restrain themselves when they made a move so that they wouldn't break the ancestral tablets. Just as he was feeling anxious, Crown Prince Yingyuan arrived with a few guards. Chapter 633. Seeing Yingyuan come, King Tuoba's heart tightened. After all, Princess Xianhuan was still poisoned. If she couldn't be cured, she would become mentally retarded and the marriage would be ruined. He put away his expression and forced a smile. "Your Highness, it's so late yet I still disturbed your Highness. I'm sorry for my rudeness." "It's fine. I'm just curious about what happened in the capital. Why are there so many experts gathering? What's ahead?" Yingyuan asked. He didn't show anything on the surface, but his heart was still a bit perturbed. To be honest, this is the Tuoba country's royal tomb. The ancestors of the royal family are enshrined inside. I received news that there were thieves who snuck in and are currently arresting them. King Tuoba didn't hide anything, but he smiled easily. "I believe that it won't take long for this matter to settle down. Your Highness should go back and rest early." When Yingyuan heard the words royal mausoleum, his mind went blank for a moment. Others might not know the nature of the corpse puppet sect, but he, Yingyuan, was the most clear. Ever since he secretly subdued Yuanji and the other four, he had secretly dug up many corpses for them. After all, the corpse puppet sect relied on this to gain a foothold. If they became stronger, it meant that Yingyuan's wings were thicker, so he let them be. Therefore, Yingyuan was even more clear about the huge attraction of powerful corpses to the corpse puppet sect disciples. Coincidentally, the Tuoba kingdom actually built their royal tomb in the royal city. Generally speaking, Thunderblaze Dynasty and Starfall Dynasty would specially choose a place with good feng shui for their royal tomb, who would build one in front of their own house. Unless this place was the best treasure. Yingyuan wasn't concerned about this. Instead, he thought that Yuanji and the other four were very likely the thieves who snuck into the royal tomb. Otherwise, who would sneak into the royal tomb? More importantly, he clearly sensed some corpse and ghost energy from the aftermath of the fight not far away. If he wasn't wrong, it should be Yuanji and the others. These 5 people were all in the middle and late stage of spirit astral realm. They were a very strong force anywhere, but under the siege of Heaven-Man Unity Realm and numerous experts, defeat and death was only a matter of time. The 5 of them were forces that Yingyuan secretly cultivated with great difficulty. To him they were of great use and definitely couldn't be lost. Therefore he had to protect these 5 people. Yingyuan cursed in his heart, a bunch of brainless people. They really know how to find trouble. He smiled and said to King Tuoba, Your Majesty, pardon me for asking, but how do you plan to deal with these people? King Tuoba snorted coldly and said, I must tear them into pieces to relieve the hatred in my heart. However, it is best to capture them alive first. Those people were actually able to hide from the senses of a Unity of Heaven realm expert and sneak into the royal mausoleum. They might have some accomplices. We can't let anyone go. When Yuan heard this, his eyeballs began to move. Just as he was about to say something else, a shocking sword shadow suddenly shot up into the sky from the royal mausoleum, as if it was going to cut the night sky into pieces. A terrifying sword intent surged forth. It was merely a formless sword intent, but all the low-level guards below the 4th level of celestial being died in an instant. Tuoba Hui took a step forward and flipped his palm. A wave-like palm force surged out and protected the king and Yuan. He said in surprise, it's Tuoba Chin's heavenly spirit sword technique. The thieves were actually able to force him to use this technique. It can be seen that they are very difficult to deal with. King Tuoba's cultivation wasn't high, so he couldn't see anything. He asked, Tuoba Hui, what is the background of those thieves? Tuoba Hui replied, there are a total of 5 thieves. Their combat strength isn't very strong, but the scary thing is that each of them can control 2 or 3 strange things. Those things are a bit like puppets, but they have a human appearance. From the aura, it is very likely that they are corpses. He paused and then couldn't help but raise his voice. Could they be people from the corpse puppet sect? King Tuoba's eyes widened slightly. As a king, his dignity made him feel awe-inspiring without being angry. When he heard that the thieves were people from the corpse puppet sect, which meant that they were the ones who poisoned Princess Xianxia, he was instantly enraged. He shouted angrily, Tuoba Chin, capture those 5 people alive, and I will pardon your negligence. Tuoba Chin heard and changed his sword technique. The soaring sword shadow turned from 1 to 5 and pierced down. Yuan Ji and the other devil cultivators immediately lost a refined corpse. The refined corpses were also refined by their own minds. When the refined corpse died, it caused them to suffer a backlash. They continuously vomited blood and were also injured. Yuan Ji transmitted a message to the other 4. Run. Immediately, the 5 of them used all their strength to control all the refined corpses and rushed towards Tuoba Chin like moths to a flame. Tuoba Chin was the biggest threat here. As long as they could hold him back, they would have a chance to break out. Close to 10 refined corpses rampaged. Tuoba Chin sneered. These refined corpses might seem difficult to deal with to others, but in front of absolute strength, they were still not enough. He was about to draw his sword, but in the next moment, everyone didn't expect that all the refined corpses would self-destruct at the same time. Boom boom boom. The terrifying corpse chi and ghost chi wreaked havoc. The entire royal mausoleum began to collapse, and violent explosions rang out. Yuan Ji and the others suffered a backlash one after another. Their faces were as pale as paper. Fortunately, the self-destruction of several refined corpses had opened up an opening for them. The 5 of them burned their essence blood and quickly escaped. Tuoba Chin was held back by the self-destruction of the refined corpses. He himself also suffered some superficial wounds. Seeing that Yuan Ji and the others were about to escape, he was extremely angry. A huge edgeless heavy sword suddenly appeared in his hand. A sharp killing intent instantly locked onto the 5 of them. Although the sword had not been sharpened, everyone within a radius of several thousand feet could feel the sharp sword intent that was everywhere. Yuan Ji and the others were like arrows at the end of their flight. They also regretted entering the royal mausoleum because of their greed. In reality, they had been very successful. It was only when they were about to collect the corpses that something triggered the array of the royal mausoleum, causing them to be exposed. Now that they were at death's door, they could only try their best to escape. However, at this moment Yuan Ji saw Yuan from afar. His footsteps slightly paused. Yuan naturally also saw Yuan Ji. He seemed to have guessed what Yuan Ji wanted to do. His heart instantly jumped a few times. He continuously gave Yuan Ji a meaningful glance, telling him to not expose his relationship with him. However, Yuan Ji still shouted from afar, Your Highness Yuan, save me. Swoosh. King Tuoba and Tuoba Hui simultaneously looked towards Yuan. Could it be that the 5 people from the corpse puppet sect were related to Yuan? The corpse puppet sect was notorious. If Yuan was really related to them, his reputation would probably be ruined. Of course, what King Tuoba cared more about was that Princess Xianxia was poisoned by the corpse poison of the corpse puppet sect. The disciples of the corpse puppet sect were Yuan's people. Then, could it be that Yuan secretly ordered them to poison Princess Xianxia? The more King Tuoba thought, the more he felt that this possibility was very high. because he was also very clear that Yuan did not want to marry Princess Xihan. He despised her status for not being worthy of Yuan, the crown prince of the Starfall dynasty. However, he did not expect that Yuan would actually do such a despicable thing. Yuan's expression was also very ugly. He had already cursed Yuan Ji's ancestors many times in his heart. Asking him for help at this time, wasn't it the same as admitting to it without being pressed? He could clearly feel that King Tuoba's gaze already carried a bit of coldness when looking at him. He hurriedly said, "Your Highness King Tuoba, there might be some misunderstanding here." Chapter 634. While Yuan was arguing with King Tuoba, Yuan Ji and the others were running for their lives. At this most chaotic moment, a figure quietly appeared beside the coffin. This person was Leng Shiqi. The chaotic scene outside was all within his expectations, or rather he was the one behind it. He was also the one who deliberately triggered the array of the royal mausoleum, causing Yuan Ji to be exposed. Now that it was a mess outside, he should have escaped far away and observed in the dark, but he took a certain risk and stayed, because he also had his eyes on the corpse in front of him. For some reason, when Leng Shiqi approached the corpse, the spirit crystal in his body began to tremble slightly, especially the black and golden dragon patterns on the spirit crystal. They were shining brightly. Leng Shiqi had no time to study it. He reached out and prepared to put the corpse into the system space, and then sneak away when no one was paying attention to him. His plan was good, but when he touched the corpse's eyes suddenly opened. The corpse's eyes were lifeless, but Leng Shiqi could see the terrifying killing intent in them. Then the golden and black aura on the corpse surged. Leng Shiqi immediately knew that things were not good. If King Tuoba and Crown Prince Yuan found him, then with their shrewdness, they would definitely know that everything tonight was secretly planned by someone. Then Leng Shiqi's plan to sow discord between the two sides would basically fail. Leng Shiqi had an idea, and immediately teleported into the mansion of the dead with the corpse. The aura of the corpse only flashed, but as Leng Shiqi expected, it still attracted some people's attention. Inside and outside the royal mausoleum, everyone with cultivation above the gang spirit realm looked over at the same time. Of course, all they saw was an empty coffin. It was also because the coffin was empty that Tuoba Chin was even more furious. Other ordinary imperial guards might not know who was in the coffin, but Tuoba Chin knew best. The person lying in the coffin was the first king of the Tuoba kingdom. He was the ancestor of the current emperor. However, the old ancestor's corpse had disappeared. As the guardian of the royal mausoleum, Tuoba Chin had committed a great crime. On the other side, Tuoba Hui also saw it with his sharp eyesight. He immediately panicked and said to King Tuoba, who was still talking to Yuan, "Your Majesty, the body of the Grand Elder is missing." Yuan was still explaining to King Tuoba. Even though his excuse was a little weak, at least it calmed King Tuoba down a little, at least on the surface. What? However, Tuoba Hui's words shocked King Tuoba. His eyes turned red. Not only had his ancestral grave been dug up, but he had also lost his ancestor's corpse. He would never be able to get rid of his reputation as an unfilial king. He glared at Yuan Ji and the others and said fiercely, "Hand over the grand ancestor's corpse, and I can leave your corpses intact." When Yuan Ji heard this, he was stunned. He subconsciously turned his head to take a look. Sure enough, there was nothing in the coffin. Even though he didn't know what was going on, he knew very well that they definitely couldn't take the blame for this. He immediately said, "We didn't touch the corpse." T. Do you dare to say that your target wasn't the corpse? Tuoba Chin walked over with his sword. With every step he took, his sword became sharper. He shouted, "Who else could it be if it wasn't you? If you don't hand it over, I will let you know what it means to live a life worse than death." The faces of Yuan Ji and the others were as black as the bottom of a pot. Their target was indeed the corpse. However, they were discovered when they opened the coffin and didn't have time to collect it. Later on, when they were fighting, they didn't pay attention to the corpse. Who knew where it went? Yuan Ji had to bite the bullet and said, "We really didn't take it. Maybe it was destroyed by the aftermath of the battle." Tuoba Chin said angrily, "Nonsense. Even if you are all dead, nothing will happen to the grand ancestor's corpse. Since you are so stubborn, I can only kill you and take it back myself." He pointed the heavy sword in his hand. Suddenly the heaven and earth trembled. Endless spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered and condensed into a sword shadow. Seeing this, Yuan's expression changed. "Wait. Crown Prince Yuan, what else do you want to say?" King Tuoba's cold voice sounded. He had changed the way he addressed Yuan from "Your Highness" to Crown Prince Yuan. It was obvious that his attitude towards Yuan had changed. Although he couldn't be 100% sure that Yuan was the one who ordered Yuanji and the others to poison the princess, it was basically Yuan who did it. Because Yuan did have the motive to do so. Since someone could sneak into the princess's room, it would be easy to kill the princess. However, the truth was that they only poisoned the princess. This was nothing more than a way to prevent the princess from marrying into the imperial family. At the same time, they didn't want to harm the princess's life. The only person who had the motive to do so was Yuan. If it was only this matter, King Tuoba could only hold his nose and swallow this anger. After all, the national power of the Tuoba kingdom and the Starfall dynasty couldn't be compared at all. Even if Yuan was the one who did it, King Tuoba couldn't do anything about it. However, what really touched King Tuoba's bottom line was that the other party actually broke into the royal tomb, insulted the ancestors and even stole the grand ancestor's corpse. This was no longer a matter of face. As a person, as a junior, as a king, this was his principle and bottom line. You are the crown prince of the Starfall dynasty. You have a noble status and a powerful background, so he could tolerate it. However, when you secretly harmed someone's daughter, dug up their ancestral tomb, and even stole their ancestor's corpse, even if King Tuoba was a bastard, he couldn't tolerate it. Yuan also heard the change in King Tuoba's tone. He started to feel anxious. He realized that this matter was completely out of his control. When he decided to let Yuanji secretly harm Princess Xihan, he had the mentality of going all out. Anyway, his background was strong enough. Even if he was found out, he wasn't afraid. However, he definitely didn't expect Yuanji and the others to actually go back and dig up the ancestral tomb of the Tuoba kingdom. Now there was no way to clean up the mess. Seeing that Yuan didn't answer, King Tuoba spoke first. Crown Prince Yuan, I can consider everything that happened tonight as the reckless actions of the 5 corpse puppet sect remnants. As long as I take the lives of these 5 people, take back their corpses and detoxify the princess, I can pretend that nothing happened tonight. He had already stated his bottom line. As long as Yuan didn't interfere in this matter and continued to marry Princess Xihan, then the Tuoba kingdom would still be willing to be on good terms with the Starfall dynasty. Otherwise, even if the Tuoba kingdom was weak, they wouldn't be willing to be a dog without any dignity. Yuan fell silent. The strongest force in his hands was Yuanji and the others. Even if they weren't reliable, they were still a rare fighting force. He didn't want to give up just like that. Chapter 635. Both sides were in a stalemate. Tuoba Qin's sword shadow was still locked onto the 5 of them. With a wave of his hand, Yuanji and the other 4 would die on the spot. Whether King Tuoba and Yuan would shed all pretenses of cordiality or pretend to reconcile, it all depended on Yuan's reaction. Seeing that Yuan was still hesitating, Yuanji could tell that Yuan was about to give up on them. He immediately transmitted his voice to Yuan. Prince Yuan, we really didn't take away the corpse. This is a matter of life and death. I'm not lying. As long as you protect us, we're willing to swear a blood oath to serve you with our lives. We'll do anything for you. Yuan was moved by Yuanji's words. The blood oath was a very powerful restriction among the devil cultivators. Once the blood oath was made, the cultivator would lose all his power if he broke the oath. If he was careless, he might even die from the backlash of the devil cultivators. Since Yuanji was willing to swear a blood oath, Yuan didn't think that they had to lie. He said in a deep voice, King Tuoba, I think there are still many things worth investigating. Why don't we detain them first? It won't be too late to talk after we find out the truth. Prince Yuan, are you determined to protect them? This time King Tuoba was not angry at all. Instead he said this very calmly. Although his tone was very calm, it also expressed his attitude. A few hours ago he was still serving Yuan. He was just short of serving Yuan tea. His reaction now was equivalent to telling Yuan that he wasn't going to serve Yuan anymore. Yuan was getting a little impulsive. He thought to himself, the Tuoba kingdom isn't even as powerful as the Starfall dynasty. How dare they put on airs in front of me? That's good too. This way this consort won't be marrying that whatever princess. It can be considered as having achieved my goal. At least he was a shrewd person. Of course he couldn't say these words out loud. He shouted at Tuoba Qin arrogantly, put away your sword and let them come. Veins popped out on Tuoba Qin's hands. He almost couldn't control himself. He looked at King Tuoba tentatively, hoping that King Tuoba would say something. He transmitted his voice, Your Majesty, this is the Tuoba kingdom, the royal tomb. If we let them leave just like that, how can we face our ancestors? Also, the patriarch's corpse had not been recovered, and the princess's poison had not been cured. Was he going to let it go just like that? According to this subject's idea, we should kill 4 of them and leave the last one alive. Let's see if he will confess or not. This subject is willing to bear all the blame. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I can't let the Tuoba kingdom be humiliated. King Tuoba's cultivation was not strong. He was only in the spiritual pulse realm, and this was achieved through the use of elixirs. He could not condense his voice into a threat, so he shook his head slightly. He could ignore Yuan, but if he really killed Yuan Ji and the others, then he would completely fall out with Yuan. No matter how much the Tuoba kingdom needed the Starfall dynasty's support, he did not have the confidence to offend the Starfall dynasty. Tuoba Qin sighed in his heart. In fact, he had already guessed that this would be the outcome. After all, the Tuoba country was weak. Weakness was the original sin. He was already prepared to stop, but one of the demonic cultivators knew that he had been saved. He had experienced the terror of life and death in a short period of time, and now he was a little arrogant. He sneered, "Your name is Tuoba Qin? Aren't you very powerful and arrogant? I'm standing right here now. Come and kill me. If you don't kill me when you die in the future, I will definitely dig out your corpse and refine it into a refined corpse. I will enslave you for the rest of your life." How could Tuoba Qin endure such words? His heart was already filled with boundless anger. After being provoked by that person's words, he could no longer hold it back. He suddenly swung his heavy sword down, and the sword shadow that stood between heaven and earth slashed down at the same time. The violent sword intent and terrifying spiritual highland exploded, and even the night sky seemed to be twisting. Half of the royal city was enveloped by the sword intent. Many ordinary people instantly felt a piercing pain all over their body, and they were rolling on the ground in pain. The 5 demonic cultivators that were targeted by him felt as if they were in a sword prison. The chi and blood in their bodies were sealed by the invisible sword intent, and they had no ability to resist at all. Tuoba Qin's sudden attack shocked everyone. The furious unity of heaven and man realm was too terrifying. Even if Tuoba Hui wanted to save them, it was too late. "Stop. Don't you dare." Yuan and King Tuoba shouted at the same time. Neither of them wanted Yuan Ji and the others to die. Needless to say, Yuan didn't need to say much. If they died, Yuan wouldn't have any capable experts under him. If Yuan Ji and the others were to die here, the Tuoba kingdom would turn against Crown Prince Yuan. That would be tantamount to falling out with the Starfall dynasty. This would only bring harm to Tuoba kingdom and no benefits. However, Tuoba Qin had already made his move. Even if he recovered from the shock and withdrew most of the sword intent, the remaining power was enough to instantly kill 4 demonic cultivators. Only Yuan Ji was left. Because his cultivation was the highest and he had a strong trump card, he barely managed to survive. He didn't dare to stay here for a moment longer. Even if Yuan was here, Tuoba Qin still dared to make his move. Since he had already killed them, he didn't mind killing one more. He immediately ignited all the chi and blood in his body and frantically fled out of the city. Yuan was also furious. His character was originally a little impulsive. At this moment he didn't care anymore. He roared, Good Tuoba kingdom. You dare to kill my men. Now that you're almighty, I'd like to see how you're going to withstand the wrath of the Starfall dynasty in the future." After he finished speaking, he left with his men and left Tuoba kingdom with the diplomatic group in the middle of the night. King Tuoba looked at the corpses of the 4 demonic cultivators and was stunned for a moment. He was already in despair. He could already foresee that it wouldn't be long before the Starfall dynasty cut off all trade routes with Tuoba kingdom. If the situation was serious, they might even send their troops to take over a portion of the cities. If this continued, the Starfall dynasty wouldn't even need to make a move. The other countries in the western region would attack Tuoba kingdom. It's dangerous, King Tuoba mumbled. Looking at his expression, he seemed to have aged a few years in just a few breaths. Tuoba Qin walked up to him and knelt down. He said, "Your Majesty, this is my fault. I'll go look for Yuan tomorrow. At most, I'll compensate him with my life." King Tuoba waved his hand helplessly and said, "Forget it. You've already come to this point. If you go, you'll just be throwing your life away. Pass down my order. Tell all the borders to pull back their defensive lines and be ready for war at any time." In just one night, Tuoba kingdom, which had always been on good terms with the Starfall dynasty and flattered them, was about to turn against them. The initiator of all this was no longer in this world. Lung Shiqi was currently entangled with the strange corpse in the Mansion of the Dead. Chapter 636. In the Mansion of the Dead, Lung Shiqi pressed one of his hands on the corpse's shoulder. Miraculously, the thick corpse qi and the mysterious golden airflow on the corpse were all absorbed by Leng Shiqi through his hand. Leng Shiqi didn't know why this was happening. He could only use his inner vision to see that the black mark and the golden dragon pattern on his spirit crystal were flickering as if they were breathing. Ever since he entered the half-step gang spirit realm by condensing his spiritual crystal in the dragon vein, there were three strange things on his spiritual crystal. They were the star mark, the black mark, and the dragon pattern. Needless to say, the star mark was naturally brought about by the bloodline of the Star Clan. When he first activated the bloodline of the Star Clan, the star mark also reacted. As for the dragon pattern, it was most likely related to the environment of the dragon vein. Then what was the black mark? Leng Shiqi once guessed that it might be related to his other bloodline, the Dark Shadow Clan bloodline. However, he did not really activate the Dark Shadow Clan bloodline, so the black mark had been quiet all this time. For some reason, it suddenly began to crazily absorb the corpse qi on the corpse. Not only the corpse qi but also another mysterious force was absorbed by Leng Shiqi and absorbed by the dragon pattern. The dragon pattern was condensed in the dragon vein, and the dragon vein was the foundation of the Thunder Yen dynasty's luck. Therefore, Leng Shiqi guessed that the golden energy might be something similar to luck. According to the Tuoba king, this corpse was the corpse of the first king of the Tuoba kingdom. In Leng Shiqi's impression, although the Tuoba kingdom was a small kingdom, it had existed for hundreds of years. For such a long time, the corpse had been stored in the Tuoba kingdom's capital and had been worshipped by the people for generations. Perhaps some strange energy had been born from it. If another few hundred years had passed, who knew what this corpse would have evolved into? Now it was all in vain and Leng Shiqi had benefited. Unfortunately, after absorbing the golden energy, Leng Shiqi did not feel any change. On the contrary, absorbing the corpse qi and ghost qi greatly increased his demonic power, and even his cultivation level rose. In a short period of time, he had already condensed 2 rank 3 stars in his spiritual star C. Now, as long as he condensed 4 more third-order stars, he could break through to the 5th level of gang spirit realm. However, something unexpected happened at this moment. The corpse actually opened its eyes. Those eyes were like a pair of dead fish eyes looking very horrifying. What was even more frightening was that those eyes actually revealed a dense cold light. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be shocked. This person had been dead for hundreds of years. Could it be that there was still a trace of consciousness left? The corpse could no longer allow the Leng Shiqi to absorb its energy. It began to resist fiercely. The thick, fishy ghost qi around it turned into a ferocious demon that opened its mouth to swallow the Leng Shiqi. One of Leng Shiqi's hands was fixed on the corpse's shoulder, so he had to stretch out the other hand and put it in front of him. The sacred light of Buddha suddenly appeared, and swastikas floated out, bathing the Leng Shiqi in it. As soon as the demon touched the light of Buddha, it immediately screamed. The ghost image was like an ice cube thrown into boiling water, and half of it evaporated in an instant. Even the corpse began to twitch and a hoarse and harsh groan came out of its mouth. Leng Shiqi pinched the Buddha's hand, but he did not directly purify the ghost image. He was afraid that if he did so, he would not be able to absorb any more demonic qi. Seeing that his cultivation was skyrocketing, he did not want to miss this opportunity. He suppressed the ghost image with the light of Buddha, while quickly absorbing the 2 kinds of energy from the corpse. At the same time, another rank 3 star C appeared in his spiritual star C. However, Leng Shiqi also found that the corpse seemed to be more shriveled than before. As time passed, the corpse became more and more shriveled and even shrunk, but Leng Shiqi's cultivation was increasing rapidly. After about an hour, Leng Shiqi's body was full of all kinds of spiritual gang, and his aura suddenly jumped to the 5th level of the spirit gang realm. At this time, the power of the corpse had almost been completely absorbed, and only the body was barely preserved. It seemed that as long as a gust of wind blew, it would turn into ashes. With the breakthrough of Leng Shiqi's cultivation, he could also take back his palm. During these 2 hours, he had been thinking about why such a thing had happened. He felt that the most likely reason was that the black mark on the spirit crystal had the ability to absorb all kinds of attribute energy. The reason why he did not have this ability until now was because he had not fought with a spirit cultivator of the devil path since he left the dragon vein, nor had he come into contact with all kinds of demons and ghosts, so he did not know that he had such an ability. Of course, this was only his own guess, and whether it was true or not still needed further verification. If that was the case, then it would be equivalent to him finding a shortcut to quickly increase his cultivation. Leng Shiqi clenched his fists and felt the power of the 5th level of the spirit gang realm. He raised a satisfied smile at the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand and prepared to turn the corpse into ashes. However, at this moment he suddenly paused. He had a sudden thought and had another plan. Leng Shiqi rubbed his chin thoughtfully and said in a low voice, "Li Gui." Whoosh, a gust of cold wind blew, and Li Gui appeared beside Leng Shiqi. "Do you have the ability to attach to a body?" Leng Shiqi asked. Li Gui nodded stiffly. Leng Shiqi ordered, "Attach to this corpse." Li Gui immediately lay down and directly sank into the corpse. Then the eyes of the corpse flashed and with a swish, it stood up straight. Then something even stranger happened. Now the skin of Li Gui's whole body gradually turned purple and blue, and the meridians on the surface of his body bulged, but the muscles on his body were tall and thin. Li Gui seemed to be not used to the state of having a body. He staggered forward a few steps and looked a bit like a zombie. This was not what surprised Leng Shiqi the most. What surprised him the most was that at this moment, Li Gui's aura was actually comparable to a spirit cultivator at the late stage of the spirit aperture realm. A ghost slave strength could increase greatly after having a body? Leng Shiqi had some doubts in his heart, but thinking that Li Gui was a master of the oneness of heaven and men realm when he was alive, and the corpse he attached to was extraordinary, it was not impossible for the two to combine to have such strength. At this time Leng Shiqi thought of another thing. He took out a strange weapon from his ring bracelet and threw it to Li Gui. It was the 6th level spiritual weapon he got from the lottery in Ningyan County, the clavicle hook. Leng Shiqi had no use for this spiritual weapon, but it was very suitable for Li Gui, especially with the clavicle hook in Li Gui's hand, and with his terrifying appearance he really looked like a messenger of hell. Leng Shiqi believed that with Li Gui's special ability and the clavicle hook, his strength was between the spirit aperture realm and the spirit astral realm. This kind of strength was nothing to Leng Shiqi now, but it was also good to have a power that he could use at will. For example, it was Li Gui's credit that he was able to lure Yuanji and the others into the royal tomb. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi did not know how the situation outside had developed. He guessed that there must have been hostility between Ying Yuan and King Tuoba, but he really did not know what the result was. However, he did not dare to go out directly. Calculating the time, there should still be many imperial guards in the royal mausoleum at this time. To be safe, he planned to stay a little longer. Therefore, he sat down cross-legged to consolidate his cultivation. Chapter 637. Imperial Capital, Dark Thunder Guard Headquarters. Li Juqing stood with his hands behind his back. There were 3 people behind him, all of whom were at the unity of heaven and man realm. They were the most powerful force of the Li family. 2 of them were Li Juning and his 4th uncle, who had once tried to kill Leng Shiqi. As for the other person, he looked 70% similar to Li Juqing. He was Li Juqing's younger brother, Li Jugu. The 4 unity of heaven and man realm experts gathered here. None of them spoke, but the room was shrouded in a layer of invisible killing intent. After a long while, a small ball in Li Juqing's hand silently glowed, and lines of text emerged. He immediately said in a cold voice, "Leng Shiqi went to the 6 kingdoms of the western region alone. This is an excellent opportunity. This time I don't want to see him come back. Do you understand?" Li Juning's eyes were incomparably sinister. Last time he had frantically gone to search for Leng Shiqi's whereabouts, but in the end, Leng Shiqi had snuck back to the imperial capital without anyone noticing. This had caused him to feel greatly ashamed, and he had even been secretly criticized by others in the Li clan. He cupped his fist and said, "Big brother, don't worry. This Leng Shiqi first took Ningyan County and then killed 2 of our top disciples. I'll make sure he doesn't return." Beside him, Li Juyu also nodded silently. As for 4th uncle, a trace of hesitation flashed through his eyes. In the end he said, "To be safe, it's best if only the 3 of us go. No matter who meets Leng Shiqi, they can easily kill him. However, Leng Shiqi is cunning and has all kinds of mysterious techniques. It won't be easy to find him in the 6 western countries. 4th uncle, don't worry about this." Li Juqing smiled and said, "You just need to spread out and block the way back to the Thunderflame dynasty. Take these things with you." As he spoke, he gave each of them a storage pouch. Li Juqing continued, "Inside this is a temporary array disk that I paid a huge price for. Once you set up this array, you will be able to sense all the spiritual auras within 100 miles. Each of you will have a dozen of them. You will use this to set up an inescapable net in Zhulu country and Lei Yan dynasty. As long as Leng Shiqi dares to show himself, he will be discovered. That will be the time of his death." Only then did 4th uncle relax and say, "If that's the case, then it's absolutely safe. But you have to be careful." Li Jueqing reminded, You have to kill him outside the borders of the Thunderflame dynasty. The Western Thunderflame army is stationed at the border of the Western Baron Prefecture. If we make too much noise they might notice us. Li Juning twirled the jade flute in his hand and said, if I were to meet him, I would be able to kill him in one move. I would definitely do it secretly. Li Jueqing glared at him. Don't underestimate that Leng Shiqi. It wasn't luck that he killed Li Zhangtao. Moreover, he entered the heavenly tomb not long ago and his cultivation increased greatly. No one knows what he obtained in the heavenly tomb. No matter who catches him, they must do their best. You can't let your guard down. Li Jueqing coughed and said, understood. Leng Shiqi naturally didn't know that Li Jueqing was going to kill him here. He even sent out 3 Unity of Heaven experts. He was still consolidating his cultivation in the Mansion of the Dead. He also calculated the time and waited until almost 24 hours had passed before stopping. It was still late at night outside. Moreover, an entire day had passed. There shouldn't be many people left in the royal mausoleum. However, Leng Shiqi still summoned the Gu King to hide his aura and used a secret technique to hide his body. In the royal mausoleum outside, after a day of tidying, it was basically repaired. However, there were still some formation masters strengthening the formation of the royal mausoleum to prevent people from sneaking in the future. The place where the coffin of the first king of the kingdom of Tuoba was originally placed had been replaced with a memorial tablet. Everyone was concentrating on setting up the formation. However, at that moment, a beam of red, blue and yellow light suddenly lit up there. The light instantly attracted the attention of some people. However, when they looked over, the light had already disappeared. One of them rubbed his eyes and said, am I hallucinating because I'm too tired? There seemed to be a beam of light just now. It's not a hallucination. I saw it too. What's going on? Shu, another person suddenly said mysteriously, lower your voices. Have you forgotten where you are? It's normal to be a little strange. Don't make a fuss. Hurry up and set up the formation. You're right. Let's get to work. They didn't know that Leng Shiqi had directly teleported hundreds of miles away using the Fate skill. When he stepped on the ground, the stone hanging in his heart was finally put down. After all, there were still Unity of Heaven experts near the royal mausoleum. Although he was confident that he could forcefully teleport away when he was in the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, that would arouse the suspicion of King Tuoba and Yuan. Then the result that Leng Shiqi wanted would not be as good as he wanted. The reason why he only teleported hundreds of miles away was because he still didn't know what the outcome of last night was. He looked left and right. His position was near a town. This town was where Yuan's diplomatic corps was going to arrive at. Leng Shiqi was prepared to gather information here and see if Yuan and the kingdom of Tuoba had really fallen out. He then entered the town and prepared to wait for the arrival of Yuan's diplomatic corps. They didn't arrive until the afternoon of the second day. This was the bad thing about diplomatic corps. They had to maintain their honor, so they didn't move quickly. Leng Shiqi used the supercilious eyes and the Gu King's ability to quickly get the answer he wanted. Yuan really did fall out with King Tuoba. Since that was the case, Leng Shiqi had completed the mission given to him by Heavenly Lord He Yen. Now he had to carry out his own mission, which was to investigate all the members of the diplomatic corps. There was no need to investigate the Starfall dynasty anymore. Yuan Ji and the other 5 demonic cultivators were dead. Yuan Ji was the only one left. Other than them, there were no problems with the rest of the diplomatic corps. Although Yuan Ji was still alive, Leng Shiqi heard that he had disappeared. Even if he returned to the diplomatic corps in the future, Leng Shiqi would be able to recognize him instantly as long as he closed the door. Therefore, the investigation of the Starfall dynasty and the hidden dangers were resolved. As for the kingdom of Tuoba, there was no need to continue investigating. They had offended the Starfall dynasty and couldn't even protect themselves, let alone plot against the Thunderflame dynasty. Therefore, Leng Shiqi planned to return and investigate the diplomatic corps of the Golden Tribe, the Great Moon Kingdom, the Jushur Kingdom and the Beilu Kingdom. With his supercilious eyes and the Gu King's ability to hide, it was easy to investigate these things. He just had to travel for a while. Chapter 638. More than a month passed quickly. During this month, Leng Shiqi went back and forth between the 6 countries of the Western region and inquired about various small countries. He really found something fishy. In order to get rid of these hidden dangers, he also experienced many dangers. Fortunately, he passed through them safely. Of course, with his personal ability, he couldn't investigate everything clearly. As for the rest, he had to leave it to his Dark Thunder Guards. At this moment, Leng Shiqi was between Zhu Road country and Beilu country. He opened the system map and prepared to teleport back to the western desolate province. When the system map opened, Lung Shiqi noticed one thing. A few hundred miles away from him, there were tens of thousands of people fighting fiercely. From the clothes of these people, it was clear that they were from Zhu Road country and Beilu country. Lung Shiqi was also slightly surprised. At this time, the Beilu country's diplomatic group should have arrived in the western desolate province. Moreover, they could only pass through Zhu Road country. This meant that the two sides had reached a certain agreement. But why was there a conflict again? As long as it had nothing to do with the Thunderfire dynasty, Lung Shiqi couldn't be bothered. However, he still teleported to the vicinity of the battle and hid. Then he saw hundreds and thousands of green soul fragments flying over and merging into his body, nourishing his physical body and spiritual power. At the same time, Underworld also absorbed all of these souls. In the blink of an eye, there were more than 1,000 souls in Underworld. There were a total of 3 conditions for Underworld to level up. The first was to recruit 2 members of Underworld. Lung Shiqi had invited Tuding and Princess Carol to Zhu Road country. This condition was fulfilled. The second condition was to absorb 3,000 souls. This condition was originally the most troublesome for him. Coincidentally, he came across the conflict between Zhu Road country and Beilu country. There were tens of thousands of people fighting each other. It had just started and more than 1,000 people had died. Therefore, it wouldn't be difficult for him to collect 3,000 souls. He couldn't help but sigh at his good luck. Lung Shiqi hid nearby and absorbed the souls while observing the battlefield. The overall strength of Zhu Lugua's side was slightly weaker. First of all, they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. In comparison, they were at least a quarter less than Beilu country. Furthermore, there were 50 to 60 spirit casters in the Beilu nation. Spirit spell casters had always been valued, especially when they joined a dynasty or a small country. They would be treated as VIPs. This did not mean that spirit casters were definitely stronger than ordinary spirit cultivators, but in this kind of large-scale war, spirit casters were simply too useful. For example, the 50 to 60 spirit casters from the Beilu kingdom were using large-scale spirit spell techniques that could instantly kill a large number of people. There were also some spirit casters who were using some restrictive spirit spell techniques, which provided great convenience for their own side. Although they were few in number, their overall effect was no less than 1,000 spirit cultivator of the same level. Lung Shiqi thought to himself, it seems like Beilu state came prepared. Zhu Lu state was caught off guard. The battle was abnormally intense. Not long after, Zhu Lugua showed signs of defeat. The generals leading the charge had already begun to break out of the siege. In the end, the battle ended with Beilu state's complete victory. Only a few hundred people from Zhu Lu state managed to escape, but Beilu state also lost a lot of people. As for the exact number, Lung Shiqi was the clearest. This was because his underworld had more than 5,000 souls. As a result, the conditions for underworld to level up were all met. Lung Shiqi first left the place and prepared to level up underworld. However, when he saw that it required 20,000 system coins to level up underworld, he felt a little heartache. He did not have much system coins on him, so he could only use his various resources to exchange for system coins. Fortunately, he was now rich. Even if he exchanged 20,000 system coins, he still had a large amount of resources left. Lung Shiqi's heart moved and entered underworld. He also saw the system prompt. Territory upgrade conditions have been met. Do you wish to spend 20,000 system coins to level up territory? Yes. Lung Shiqi did not hesitate. However, a strong repulsive force immediately appeared beside him and pushed him out of underworld. He was forced to return to the outside world. Only then did he realize that another system prompt had appeared. Territory upgrade requires 1 natural day. During the upgrade period, you will not be able to enter the territory. Lung Shiqi understood. At this point, if Underworld was to level up again, it would be Tier 3. It seemed that it was similar to the system's upgrade. Both required a certain amount of time. Anyway, it only required 1 day. Lung Shiqi did not mind. Then, he summoned the Gu King and transformed it into a pair of colorful glass wings and flew into the sky. He flew 1,000 feet in the air and headed straight in the direction of the Western Wilderness Province. He estimated that he only needed to fly for another 1,000 miles and wait for his fate skill to cool down. Then, he would be able to return to the Western Wilderness Province. A few hours later, Lung Shiqi was flying peacefully. However, suddenly, his whole body trembled. An extremely strong sense of danger rushed to his head. Immediately, several invisible forces suddenly appeared in the air. These forces were invisible and untouchable. However, the terrifying power within them caused Lung Shiqi to turn pale with fright. Boom. Lung Shiqi instantly activated the wild demon blood beast form. Then, several invisible forces approached him. They seemed to be something like a blade or a sword. They were extremely sharp. After coming into contact with Lung Shiqi, they easily cut through his wild demon blood beast form. Several hideous wounds were torn open on his body. Even the wings on his back were torn apart. Lung Shiqi was shocked. He knew very well how strong his wild demon blood beast form was. However, it was still so easily cut open. It could even be said that if it were not for the layer of granite shield on the surface of his body, his limbs would have been broken. There was no need to think too much about such a powerful attack. Only a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm could do it. Lung Shiqi fell from high up in the sky. Waves of gray nirvana wind rose around his body, forming a gentle wind that supported him to land on the ground. At this moment, an elegant figure walked out with a jade flute in his hand. He said in surprise, "You're not dead? As expected, you have some skills. It was not in vain for me to come and kill you personally." This person was Li Juning, who had specially come to kill Lung Shiqi. It could only be said that Lung Shiqi's luck was not too good to be able to encounter Li Juning. If he did not fly back directly but used the fate skill to teleport, he would not have encountered Li Juning and the other masters of the unity of heaven and man realm. Previously, he happened to encounter the battle between the Beilu Kingdom and the Zhulu Kingdom. Therefore, he absorbed tens of thousands of souls and met the requirements for the Mansion of the Dead to upgrade. This was considered good luck. But then again, if it were not for the fact that the Mansion of the Dead needed a natural day to upgrade, Lung Shiqi could not escape into the Mansion of the Dead and could only fight Li Juning head-on. Luck was really illusory. As the saying goes, every peck and every drink is predestined. Perhaps this was his predestined tribulation. Chapter 639. Of course, Lung Shiqi didn't have time to care about this. He stared at Li Juning with cold eyes. Although he had never seen this person before, Li Juning and Li Jucheng were brothers and looked similar. Lung Shiqi could conclude that Li Juning was here to kill him. He thought that Li Jucheng would deal with him when he came to the West Desolate Province, but he didn't expect that Li Juning would block his way back. The most important thing was that there were not many people who knew that he left the West Desolate Province and entered the 6 nations of the West. To be more precise, there were no more than 10 people. Then how did his whereabouts leak out? This meant that he had Li Jucheng's people around him. Was it Gaoi? Was it Lianyi? Or the Dark Thunder Guard of the West Desolate Province? Lung Shiqi pondered as he probed, "May I know who you are? You and I don't seem to have any enmity. Why do you want to kill me?" Li Juning snorted and said, Lu Xingji, rumor has it that you are very smart, but I think you are just so. Forget it, I have no interest in a dead person. Hurry up and take your head back to report. Li Juning held the jade flute horizontally, and a continuous flute sound came. There seemed to be a pair of gentle hands comforting one's soul, making one sink into it unknowingly. Strangely, the flute sound ignored Lung Shiqi's ears and directly hit his soul. Lung Shiqi's starry sea suddenly shook, and his primordial spirit immediately bloomed. From the outside, it could be seen that Lung Shiqi's huge spiritual power surged out, and the back of his head shone brightly, almost blocking 70 to 80% of the flute sound. Li Jucheng's eyes flashed with surprise. "I didn't expect you to have condensed a primordial spirit. You are really amazing. If I don't kill you today, you will be a big problem in the future." His killing intent grew stronger, and the flute sound suddenly changed, becoming like a stormy sea that swallowed everything. The invisible sound power came from all directions, and suddenly dozens of bloody wounds appeared on Lung Shiqi's body. Lung Shiqi opened his Byakugan, but to his surprise, even his Byakugan could not capture the invisible blade. He immediately formed a seal with his forearms at the same time. In an instant, a dragon flame formation with a radius of several hundred feet appeared. It was as if a golden pillar of fire had suddenly appeared, burning the air. At the same time, a mass of dense earthy yellow light gathered, forming a semicircular light shield to protect him. Lung Shiqi used both the 9 Palaces fire formation and the earth pulse at the same time. He could not see where the sound attack came from, but as the pure gold earth dragon flame continued to surge, it almost covered the entire area within several hundred feet. The violent flames unintentionally burned away most of the sound attack. Even so, Lung Shiqi could see that the 9 fire pillars were being cut apart. Fortunately, he could also catch the traces of the invisible sound blades. He activated the earth pulse and tried to deflect the sound blades with anti-gravity. However, the shield of the earth pulse was broken apart after a series of noises. The anti-gravity could not block the invisible sound blades at all. Fortunately, the pure gold earth dragon flame and anti-gravity had reduced the power of the sound blades by more than half. Lung Shichi's body lit up with a golden Buddhist light, and a sacred and solemn aura spread out. Invincible Vajra divine art. The evil and frenzied evil demon blood beast body and the sacred invincible Vajra divine art were activated at the same time. Lung Shichi's demonic body was dyed with a layer of golden light, and the two completely opposite auras coexisted perfectly on his body. After being weakened, the invisible sound blades swept over and hit Lung Shichi's body with a series of ding ding dang 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 sounds of metal colliding. At a glance, there were only a few faint white marks on his body. Li Juning's expression became even more sinister. He had already attacked 3 times, but he had not killed Lung Shichi. Although Lung Shichi looked like his flesh was torn open, Li Juning knew very well that Lung Shichi was not seriously injured. At most, it was just some superficial wounds. He could not help but exclaim in his heart, "What a powerful body!" Li Juning had extremely detailed information on Lung Shichi, including all the spiritual techniques and special secret techniques he had shown in front of others. For example, the 9 palace fire diagram and the earth pulse that Lung Shichi was using were all recorded, and their characteristics were also written down. However, Lung Shichi's invincible Vajra divine art was not in the information. Especially the defensive power of the invincible Vajra divine art, it seemed to be even stronger than that of frenzied evil demon blood beast body. One had to know that when Li Juning had attacked Lung Shichi, he had broken through the defense of frenzied evil demon blood beast body, but now he could not break through the invincible Vajra divine art. Damn it, this brat was still hiding something. Li Juning was in the unity of heaven and man realm, but after 3 moves he only managed to slightly injure Lung Shichi, which made him feel a little embarrassed. Lung Shichi could roughly tell that Li Juning was in the early stage of the unity of heaven and man realm through these few moves. However, Li Juning and Li Zhangtao were both in the early stage of the unity of heaven and man realm, but Li Juning relied on his own abilities to break through, so he was much stronger than Li Zhangtao. Now that the Mansion of the Dead was closed, it would take at least a few hours for him to level up successfully. The Fate skill was also on cooldown, so there was no way he could drag it out. Now there were only 2 paths in front of him, either escape or fight. However, when he was ambushed, the wings that the Gu King had transformed into were cut off, and he could no longer fly. If he wanted to rely on the remnant wind lightning steps to escape from an expert in the unity of heaven and man realm, it would be unrealistic. Then the only path left was to fight to the death. Lung Shichi took advantage of the moment when Li Juning's attack was interrupted. He was unwilling to be beaten up passively. His hands quickly formed a seal behind his back, and the Nirvana remnant wind howled. However, these hurricanes did not directly rush towards Li Juning. Instead, they spread out and merged with the fire pillars in the 9 palace fire formation. The wind helped the fire, and the fire pillars formed by the red gold earth dragon flames directly turned into 9 raging hurricanes that swept through the world. At the same time, Lung Shichi's main body held a long spear with both hands. The spear was stained with golden scales, and a piercing crimson cold air rose around him as he pointed it at Li Juning. The 9 dragon flame hurricanes burned everything and intertwined with each other, instantly trapping Li Juning. However, Li Juning's expression did not have a trace of panic. In the eyes of others, the 9 palace fire formation that merged with the red gold earth dragon flames and Nirvana remnant wind was extremely powerful, but in his eyes, it was still lacking. At this moment, he was staring at the long spear in Lung Shichi's hand, because he recognized that it was the 10 directions floating snow spear. It was the 10 directions floating snow spear that originally belonged to Li Zhangtao. Lung Shichi actually used Li Zhangtao's weapon to deal with him, which made Li Juning feel extremely insulted. He laughed sinisterly and said, "You think you deserve to use the 10 directions floating snow spear?" As soon as Li Juning's voice fell, the jade flute blew. The sound was sonorous and strong, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were charging fearlessly. In the void, countless invisible spears formed by sound appeared in an instant, wrapped in boundless killing intent, and stabbed towards Lung Shichi. Chapter 640. Lung Shichi's long spear shook and thousands of spear shadows appeared like a surging wave. The clearly sharp spear shadows formed a golden wave that rolled backwards. What was strange was that the golden waves were mixed with traces of crimson ice rivers, leaving behind strange ice crystals wherever they passed. Countless sparks flashed in the sky, and ear-piercing sounds spread in all directions. At the same time, the dragon flame hurricane suddenly gathered and went to kill Li Juning. Li Juning knew that Lung Shichi could use multiple spirit techniques at the same time, but he could do it too. As he blew the sound kill spear to kill Leng Shiqi, he stepped lightly and his body floated like a ghost, shuttling back and forth in the raging flames. Although he was occasionally touched by the pure gold earth dragon flame, the clothes on his body had ice threads that flowed like light. It was unknown what material the ice threads were made of, but they were actually able to resist the pure gold earth dragon flame. Leng Shiqi's heart sank when he saw this. It could be seen that Li Juning had come prepared. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The Dark Thunder Guard headquarters had too much information about him. Moreover, his control over the crimson gold earth dragon flame was indeed too narrow. Currently he only had the 9 palace fire diagram as a means to deal with it. The 9 palace fire diagram supported by the pure gold earth dragon flame was indeed very strong. It was enough to threaten a great expert of the unity of heaven and man realm. Especially when encountering devil cultivators or spirit cultivators who cultivated cold chi, it had a very strong restraining effect. For example, Li Zhangtao was like this. Most of his ice spirit energy was suppressed by the pure gold earth dragon flame, which led to his death. However, Li Juning was completely different. He actually cultivated an extremely rare sound-type spiritual skill. Although the crimson gold earth dragon flame itself might have been able to affect Li Juning was already prepared. He had a treasure that could restrain flames. As a result, the heavenly earth dragon flame was actually unable to play any role. Since this was the case, Leng Shiqi's heart hardened. The Dragon Eye Hurricane that was originally a fusion of wind and fire was now rapidly repelling each other. The surrounding wind and fire spiritual energy became abnormally violent, and waves of heat continued to spread out. If there was a spirit pulse realm cultivator here, they would probably be directly blasted to death by the heat waves. The Leng Shiqi actually caused the crimson gold earth dragon flame and nirvana remnant wind to explode. Li Juning's expression also changed slightly. In the face of such a powerful attack, no matter how fast he was, it was useless. He had no choice but to retreat. But once he retreated, the effectiveness of his sonic spear would be greatly reduced. On the battlefield above him, he had the absolute upper hand. Leng Shiqi's golden spear shadows had already been destroyed to pieces. As long as he had 1 or 2 more breaths of time, he would be able to break through them. In other words, if Leng Shiqi had not used the 7th level precious weapon, the floating snow spear of 10 directions, he would have been defeated. We can't retreat. Li Juning secretly decided. Since the beginning of the fight, Leng Shiqi had surprised him several times. If he retreated this time, not only would he have a good opportunity to severely injure Leng Shiqi, but he would also be very aggrieved. He, a realm of oneness of heaven and men, was forced to retreat by a realm of gang spirit. He absolutely could not allow this to happen. Anyway, I have the ice silk cold clothes on. Even if I have to resist the crimson gold earth dragon flame, I am not afraid. He thought so, and then the sound of the flute became more intense. The sound that was enough to pierce the eardrum shook the world, and even the air twisted a few times visible to the naked eye. Bang bang bang. The waves of spear shadows transformed by Leng Shiqi's golden waves of stormy waves were completely shattered in an instant. Li Juning's sonic spear was a little stronger. If he was really hit by these sonic spears, even if he activated Wild Demon Blood Beast Body and Vajra Unbreakable Force at the same time, it was very likely that he would die here. However, Leng Shiqi had already prepared a backup plan, because as the golden spear shadows swept, crimson ice crystals were left behind. He changed the gesture in his hand, and a gust of cold air diffused from those ice crystals. In the blink of an eye, the cold wind whistled above the sky, and the endless cold force condensed into a piece of hell. It was crimson hell. Leng Shiqi didn't expect the crimson nether prison to be able to block Li Juning's sonic spears. What he wanted was for the crimson nether prison's aura to permeate all the sonic spears and make them completely reveal themselves. As expected, the sonic spears were wrapped in crimson hell, and all of them were covered with a layer of faint crimson cold air, and this strange cold air also restrained the speed of the sonic spears to a certain extent. Seeing that crimson hell was effective, Leng Shiqi used remnant wind thunder light steps to quickly retreat. Li Juning immediately shouted, "You want to escape?" Just as he was about to chase, Leng Shiqi waved his hands, and there was a loud rumbling sound. The crimson gold earth dragon flame and the remnant wind of nirvana exploded. The extreme flames and the power of nirvana raged wildly, and the surrounding thousands of feet directly turned into a huge pit dozens of feet deep. Li Juning was also engulfed by the explosion. However, there was a layer of invisible sound barrier around him. Even if the pure gold earth dragon flame touched him, it would be blocked by the ice silk frost armor. Therefore he was able to traverse through the purgatory. However, what awaited him was colorful flying flowers that filled the sky. In an instant, the flying flowers slowly floated down from the sky, dazzling and dazzling. At this moment, Li Juning's eyes also showed a brief loss of consciousness, but a pendant on his neck shook gently, waking him up again. What an exquisite illusion. It can make me fall into it unknowingly. Fortunately, I prepared something to break the illusion in advance. Otherwise he might have really escaped. Li Juning was in a daze. Just as he was about to command the sound spear to kill Leng Shiqi, those brilliant flowers suddenly turned into streaks of sword qi. Each petal was a streak of starlight sword qi, and the sword qi layer upon layer covered the sky. From afar, it was clearly a flower that was constantly blooming. All the sword qi in sight began to spin rapidly again, and countless starlight sword qi enveloped Li Juning like a sword prison. This was the dazzling flower that incorporated the level 6 spiritual technique, Sword Fury Wildflower. Rip. Li Juning drew 5 strings in front of him with his 5 fingers. Then he continued to play with his 10 fingers. Guqin sounds surged out and the sound waves spread out with a sharp rhythm. Wherever they went, the void was torn apart and all the sword qi was cut into nothingness. Moreover, these ripples were extremely fast, and in less than a breath, they arrived at Leng Shiqi's side. Leng Shiqi did not seem to have expected Li Juning's attack to be so powerful and fast. He could not react in time and was hit by the ripples. His wild demon blood beast body and Vajra invincible divine art could not withstand the sound waves, and he was cut in half at the waist by Li Juning. However, Li Juning did not laugh. Instead, he frowned because he felt that Leng Shiqi should not have been killed by him like this. Ever since they fought, Leng Shiqi seemed to be in an absolute disadvantage and could die at any time, but he always had a way to survive, so Li Juning did not think that Leng Shiqi would die like this. Chapter 641. At this moment, 5 multicolored phantoms suddenly appeared and flew in 5 different directions. Li Juning showed an expression of, "I knew it. How dare you use a mere illusion technique in front of me?" Although he couldn't tell which illusion was the real body of Leng Shiqi, for a spirit cultivator like him who cultivated sound wave techniques, he didn't lack large-scale spiritual techniques. He didn't need to know which one was the real body, he could just kill them all. The crimson hell in the sky could no longer stop the sound spear. Li Juning gently waved his hand, and the sound spears were divided into 5 parts. Then they tore through the air and shot directly at the 5 illusions of Leng Shiqi. 4 of the illusions were instantly obliterated. Li Juning sneered. The last one must be the real body of Leng Shiqi. The sound spear fell and pierced the illusions into a sieve. However, Li Juning frowned. He knew that Leng Shiqi's body was strong. Even if he died, he couldn't be penetrated so easily. The only explanation was that all the illusions were fake. Li Juning suddenly felt like he was being played. What he wanted to know the most now was where the real body of Leng Shiqi was. How did Leng Shiqi sneak away under his nose? Li Juning's perception was fully activated, but he still couldn't find anything. He immediately took out a formation plate. This was the detection formation that Li Juqing gave him. He also used this thing to find the aura of Leng Shiqi flying in the sky in advance, so he had the opportunity to intercept and kill him. But his face suddenly darkened, because even this formation couldn't sense the aura of Leng Shiqi. How could this be? Even if Leng Shiqi was flying in the sky, the formation could sense it. How could it not find him now? He must be nearby. Li Juning said to himself, and there was a hint of disbelief in his eyes. In fact, Leng Shiqi was deep underground at this moment. He had replicated the method he used when he was hunted down by the gang spirit realm experts of the Thousand Illusions Sword sect on the South Divine Peak. He used the lustful flowers as a feint to attack, while he used the hand of earth to sneak into the ground. Leng Shiqi had not used the hand of the earth for a long time. Now he felt an indescribable smoothness when he used it. He was like a fish in water or a dragon in the sea. His speed was extremely fast. He didn't care too much about it. Perhaps this was the effect of his high cultivation. He frantically dived underground and at the same time, pulled away from Li Juning. The reason why he was not detected by Li Juning was that there was a little bug on his shoulder, which was the Gu King. Now Gu King was also seriously injured. The wings on his back were all broken and there was blood flowing out. Fortunately, Gu King's concealment ability was still there, helping Leng Shiqi to conceal his aura. There was no way Li Ju would let Leng Shiqi escape. He took out a drum as tall as a man from his mustard seed bracelet, clenched his fist and punched the drum. Boom. It was like a sudden clap of thunder on the ground. Even people dozens of miles away could hear it clearly. With Li Juning as the center, the world around him shook. A strange rhythm surged and the surrounding space began to distort slightly. Li Juning closed his eyes. At this time all the places where the sound wave passed through were within his range of perception. What was different from before was that this time, the range of his perception also included the sky and the ground. After 2 breaths, Li Juning suddenly opened his eyes, and a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. He shouted in a low voice, "So you're hiding underground? You still want to run? Come out." Boom. He struck the surface of the drum with his fist and all the force struck the ground. Immediately, the ground within a radius of several kilometers started to shake like the surface of a lake, and waves of powerful force shattered everything beneath the ground. Leng Shiqi, who was escaping, felt a strong force coming towards him. He was shocked. Li Juning had discovered him. Helplessly, he was forced to return to the ground to avoid this attack. However, this also meant that his escape had failed. Seeing Leng Shiqi break out of the ground, Li Juning punched with both fists. Waves of sound waves attacked. It was as if the entire world was filled with the sound waves. There was no way to avoid it. Leng Shiqi secretly took a deep breath. He clenched his fists and the left and right sides of his body shone with black and white light and soared into the sky. The black and white light intertwined. With a dragon's roar, a yin-yang dragon that was nearly 300 feet long appeared in the sky above. Moreover, the dragon horns of this yin-yang dragon were dark gold in color. A dragon's aura spread out, and it seemed to give the yin-yang dragon a trace of life. Floating dragon, Taishu. Li Juning's expression also became serious. Leng Shiqi's information also recorded this move. This was also his strongest move. As long as he broke through floating dragon, Taishu, Leng Shiqi would no longer be able to resist. As soon as the roaming dragon appeared, all the heaven and earth spiritual energy in the surroundings instantly became chaotic. The heaven and earth spiritual energy that Li Juning, who was in the unity of heaven and man realm, was most proud of was suppressed to the extreme. The sound waves that were just like the end of the world dissipated on their own. However, Li Juning's expression was still the same. He took off a ring on his finger and crushed it. A blurry figure appeared behind him. The figure suddenly turned into wisps of gas that intertwined with each other. Finally, it condensed into a protective spirit shield around Li Juning. This kind of spirit shield looked very ordinary. Even a low-level spirit cultivator in the spirit transformation realm could do it. However, Li Juning knew that this was a protective spirit shield left behind by his Li family's ancestor. It could completely withstand the full-force attack of a mid-stage Unity Realm cultivator. In order to kill Leng Shiqi, he had spent a lot of money. The floating dragon soared through the sky. It suddenly opened its big mouth and swooped down. Wherever the floating dragon went, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was destroyed. The 5 elements were reversed and yin and yang were reversed. This force that was enough to change the color of heaven and earth blasted on Li Juning's protective spirit shield. In an instant, a dazzling light shone for hundreds of miles. However, no sound came out. It was as if even the sound of the battle was swallowed up. When the light dissipated, with Li Juning as the center, the ground within a radius of tens of thousands of feet had sunk more than 100 feet deep. It was really barren. However, Li Juning was still standing in the same place safely without any damage. However, his face was much paler than before because the protective spirit shield around his body was on the verge of collapse. This was the protective means left by the Li family's ancestor. Under the attack of Leng Shiqi, who was in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm, it was almost broken? Didn't this mean that Leng Shiqi now had the strength to kill a spirit cultivator in the Unity Realm alone? If Leng Shiqi broke through to the Unity Realm, who in the Li family could kill him? No, by that time they should be worried about whether Leng Shiqi would kill them. A person with such terrible potential must not be allowed to live. Chapter 642. Li Juning swore to kill Leng Shiqi, but Leng Shiqi was also unforgiving. It was within his expectation that Yulong Taishu could not kill Li Juning. The long-lost blood-stained star devil saber was unsheathed. Suddenly the devil chi rose and the evil spirit soared to the sky, including some ghost chi. The blood-stained star devil saber trembled in Leng Shiqi's hand and made an excited buzzing sound. Leng Shiqi could clearly feel the excitement of the spirit. It was the first time since he got the blood-stained star devil saber. During this time, he had been nurturing the saber, which made the spirit suffocate. In Li Juning's eyes, he did not expect that Leng Shiqi would have such a horrible evil spirit. He could not imagine how many lives Leng Shiqi had killed. In fact, Li Juning still misunderstood Leng Shiqi. Although Leng Shiqi had killed a lot of people along the way, he had not condensed such a substantial evil spirit. It was mainly because of his passive skill of Hell Curse, which would absorb a certain degree of evil spirit while absorbing the remnant souls. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been bitten by the evil spirit and become a killing madman. Sooner or later he would be besieged by many spirit cultivators. But Leng Shiqi himself practiced the 7 evil blood-killing formula and could use the evil spirit for himself. Moreover, Leng Shiqi's spiritual force was so strong that he had already condensed a spirit. In addition, he had the red gold earth dragon flame and Buddhist cultivation method, so it was easy for him to suppress the evil spirit. The violent devilish energy churned endlessly. Leng Shiqi stood with his saber in front of him. The surging devilish energy formed a phantom of a demon god holding a devil's saber. Leng Shiqi chopped down, and the demon god shadow behind him also chopped down. Suddenly, a saber light appeared as if it could cut everything. Devil, ephemeral bloom. Li Juning never thought that he would be in a passive situation, but he did not believe that Leng Shiqi could use powerful spiritual force one after another with the cultivation of the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Therefore he decided to be safe and wait for the attack. As long as Leng Shiqi's spiritual force was depleted, he could only be slaughtered. He took out the big drum again and sound waves gathered around him to form an invisible sound barrier. Buzz. Before the evil spirit's blade strength sound, the blade was constantly shaken by the sound barrier. It had signs of collapse at the edge. Leng Shiqi's strength's blade sound, but with a loud ding, a loud ding. The demon blade was blades that heaven's blade was bounced off. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed slightly. Li Juning's invisible sound barrier had the same effect as the earth pulse, which made the devil, ephemeral bloom that he had accumulated almost no effect. The reason why he did not use the ephemeral bloom was that he knew that Li Juning had a treasure that could block illusions, so the effect of the ephemeral bloom would be greatly reduced. But the devil, ephemeral bloom could not hurt Li Juning at all. Ha ha ha. Li Juning sneered. Seeing that Leng Shiqi was obviously exhausted, he said, "The stronger your attack, the stronger my sound barrier will be. Well, you have no spiritual force, right? Let's see if you can survive this time." Li Juning was about to kill Leng Shiqi, but he did not know that Leng Shiqi was also pondering over Li Juning's words. Suddenly he had an idea. Leng Shiqi's blade force changed, and the evil spirit and devil chi around him suddenly disappeared. The originally ferocious and violent blade force became extremely slow. At the same time, Leng Shiqi's light of Buddha shone brightly behind him and he slashed down. There was no killing intent in the blade intent, but it contained endless power to save the world. This was the merciful blade technique that Tudeng had passed on to him. The blade slashes Bodhi, exterminates evil and saves the world. Buddha, ephemeral bloom. Buddha's light of all living beings. The strange blade light fell, ignoring Li Juning's sound barrier, and directly slashed his body under Li Juning's shocked gaze. Your sound barrier can block most attacks, and the stronger the attack, the more likely you will be shocked. But Buddha, ephemeral bloom, has no killing intent. It does not want to kill you but to save you. The merciful light of Buddha's light of purification enveloped Li Juning. As he was in the oneness of heaven and men realm, his path of cultivation was also stained with a lot of blood and karma. Under the influence of the power to save the world, a layer of karma fire suddenly ignited all over his body. Li Juning suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an endless hell, and there were bursts of sharp pain all over his body. The terrible thing was that this pain did not come directly from his body, but from his heart, from his soul. Even his soul was starting to burn. Li Juning hugged his head and wailed. His body and soul were being punished by karma, but his eyes became more and more fierce. His eyes had turned blood red, and there was only endless killing intent in them. Even if he was tortured, he had to kill Leng Shiqi first. Leng Shiqi had used the Great Void Swimming Dragon and the 2 ephemeral bloom moves in succession. Now he had less than 20% of his spiritual power left, and the chi, blood and mental power in his body had been greatly consumed. If Li Juning attacked again, he might really die here. At this point, his only chance was the secret method recorded in the Heavenly Star Technique, the Falling Star Technique. The Falling Star Technique could allow Leng Shiqi to burst out superpower in a short time, but the price was that he would lose the most advanced star of chaos forever. Judging from his current cultivation at the 4th level of Gang Spirit Realm, it meant that he had to sacrifice his current cultivation and drop to the 3rd level of Gang Spirit Realm. This was not just a level difference, but a huge gap between the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm and the early stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Cultivation was not easy, and who would want to lose his cultivation? But cultivation was not so important in the face of life and death. As long as he was alive, he could still cultivate his cultivation back after some time. But if he lost his life, how could he talk about cultivation? In Leng Shiqi's spiritual star C, his mental power had locked on a fourth-order star, and he was ready to use the falling star technique at any time. At this time, Li Juning's whole body was blooming with blood. In order to resist the burning of the hellfire, he had to start burning his essence in blood. Then he pointed out a finger, and the spiritual power between heaven and earth immediately gathered crazily. The finger seemed to directly break the space, and a very thin thread in the air quickly shot toward Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi had begun to prepare to use the falling star technique, but at this time he suddenly remembered something. Immediately he showed a panicked look. He seemed to want to struggle and escape, but his speed was far slower than that of the black thread. The black thread streaked across, and Leng Shiqi's legs below his waist continued to run forward, but his upper body had already fallen to the ground. Leng Shiqi dead. Chapter 643. Puff. Li Juning could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Looking at the body of Leng Shiqi that had been cut in half, he was still a little worried. He endured his injury and once again sensed the breath of Leng Shiqi. When he confirmed that the breath of Leng Shiqi had completely dissipated, he was secretly relieved. He finally killed him. Before Li Juning intercepted and killed Leng Shiqi, he had never expected that it would be so difficult to kill a man in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm. He had prepared the ice thread cold clothes and treasures that could ignore illusions. In this case he even used his life-saving trump card to barely kill Leng Shiqi. He had thought that he could finish the battle with just a few moves, but he was forced to burn his essence and blood and use his trump card, which caused him serious internal injuries. He could not imagine how he could kill Leng Shiqi if he did not have the ice thread cold clothes and the spiritual weapon that could resist illusions. Li Juning thought about it carefully and realized that he might not be able to do it. Fortunately, I am well prepared this time. No wonder Li Jueqing values him so much. Even a lion will do its best to catch a rabbit. I can't underestimate any opponent in the future. Ahem. Li Juning reminded himself, but he suddenly coughed violently again, because he was still entangled by the hellfire at the moment. If he was in his heyday he could suppress it, but now his battle strength was greatly reduced. He could only take a few elixirs and adjust his breath on the spot, trying to get rid of the hellfire. But suddenly a figure appeared behind him. Who is it? Li Juning noticed in an instant. He turned around abruptly and saw a man with hundreds of starlight gems all over his body. This man was Leng Shiqi. Lu Xingji? How can you still be alive? Li Juning was immediately shocked. He had just confirmed that Leng Shiqi's breath had completely disappeared, and even his body had been cut in half. How could he not be dead? Li Juning glanced to the side. The two halves of the Leng Shiqi's corpse had disappeared. Now there was only a straw doll lying there. This was the substitute doll that Leng Shiqi had bought from the system shop. It could help him block a fatal attack. Leng Shiqi had used the substitute doll to save his life. However, he did not run away this time because he realized that the substitute doll did not simply block the attack. Instead, it changed time when he was about to die. To be more precise, he had reversed Leng Shiqi's time a little bit, which happened to be the state before he used the two ephemeral blossoms. At this time, Leng Shiqi still had half of the spiritual power in his body. His qi, blood, and spiritual power were also relatively sufficient. Especially when Leng Shiqi saw that Li Juning had also suffered heavy internal injuries and was surrounded by hellfire. Was this not the best opportunity to kill Li Juning? Li Juning did not have time to be shocked. He could see the cold killing intent in Leng Shiqi's eyes. He knew that only one person could survive today. Although I don't know what method you used to escape with your life, since I can kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Li Juning said viciously, but Leng Shiqi ignored him. Only then did Li Juning notice that Leng Shiqi's eyes had turned gold and silver. In addition to the killing intent, there was also indifference. He looked at Li Juning as if he was looking at a stone on the side of the road. Leng Shiqi had used the substitute doll to escape, but he had indeed experienced life and death once. The horror of death was still imprinted in his heart. As the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. He, who had been reborn by going back in time, had also entered an extremely mysterious state. Leng Shiqi opened his arms. The 360 spiritual cavities in his body became brighter and brighter, including the mysterious star atlas carved on his body began to flicker. Immediately after, starlight flowed around his body, and streams of light shot out. In an instant, the sky darkened, and the bright sun in the sky suddenly turned into a starry sky. At the same time, Star Atlas flew out from Leng Shiqi's body. The galaxy flowed, the nebula changed, and the space suddenly became a starry universe. Heavenly Cosmic Star Gang. Li Juning looked at all this in a daze. As a master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, he should not be in this state. But at this time he could not feel any trace of spiritual power of heaven and earth, as if he was no longer in the original world. How could this not shock him to the core? The most powerful thing about the realm of oneness of heaven and men was that he could use the spiritual power of heaven and earth. Now he had completely lost this reliance and was injured. Now he could only exert the combat strength of the late stage of Gang spirit realm at most. This kind of combat strength was rare in normal times. But if he wanted to kill Leng Shiqi again with this kind of combat strength, Li Juning himself was not sure. Leng Shiqi's gold and silver eyes flashed a trace of khaki color. Suddenly the stars in the whole starry sky turned khaki, as if there were countless Saturn stars. Then, a burst of strange energy sprinkled down, which contained both gravity and anti-gravity at the same time. Leng Shiqi tapped his foot lightly, and his body slowly floated up. He stood in midair and looked down at Li Juning. With a thought, the stars in the sky flickered continuously, and an extremely powerful gravity suddenly appeared. Even the earth seemed to be wailing. Li Juning was pressed down by the infinite gravity and was instantly pressed to the ground. Now he could not move at all. He could not even blink his eyes. All the blood in his body was stagnant, and his bones were on the verge of collapse at any time. If it went on like this, it would not be long before he was smashed to pieces. Li Juning finally began to be afraid. He had already felt the breath of death. He was horrified and said, What is this? He could not understand. If Leng Shiqi had such a means, why didn't he use it at the beginning? Why did he wait until now? In fact, Leng Shiqi did it at will. He did not know that he had such an ability. Of course, Li Juning could not just wait for death. He opened his mouth with difficulty and gently spat out a syllable. Ho! Immediately, a faint sound wave spread out. It seemed very inconspicuous, but wherever the sound wave spread, all the gravity returned to heaven and earth and no longer existed. This was a secret method that Li Juning had obtained from ancient times. It was said that when practiced to the great perfection realm, everything in the world would return to its original state. He had only learned a little bit after practicing for more than 10 years, but this little bit of knowledge had become his biggest trump card and killing weapon. However, the price of this move was also very high. Li Juning's body was aging at a speed visible to the naked eye. This secret method was overdrawing his life. The sound wave spread out, and a small field was propped up in Leng Shiqi's heavenly star atlas. Li Juning broke free from the gravity and was about to escape. Yes, he was a grandmaster at the oneness of heaven and men realm. He had come to kill Leng Shiqi, but now he wanted to escape, because he did not want to die. However, how could Leng Shiqi let him go? Leng Shiqi put his palms together, and the heavenly star atlas suddenly burst out with boundless holy light. Huge Buddhist lotuses suddenly appeared, and at the same time, countless stars in the heavenly star atlas gathered in an instant. Wrapped in the Buddhist light, they formed a giant palm shadow that covered the sky. The Buddha's palm. The palm shadow slowly fell, and every inch it fell seemed to make heaven and earth tremble slightly. Li Juning was frightened, but he did not dare to stop. Even though he knew that his chances of escaping were not high, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. At this moment, a yellow light flashed, and under the extreme pressure of gravity, it was as if the palm shadow was pushed from behind. The Buddha's palm instantly smashed down. What ancient secret arts! What strange sound waves! They were all destroyed like paper under the Buddha's palm. The Buddha's palm destroyed all of Li Juning's means. When it fell, gods and demons would retreat and Buddha would be boundless. The shocking Buddhist light shone for thousands of miles. When the Buddhist light dissipated, only a palm print with a radius of several miles was left on the ground. Other than that, there was nothing else. Li Juning, a grandmaster at the oneness of heaven and men realm, died. Chapter 644. Leng Shiqi stood in place and looked at his palm in a daze. Li Juning was dead? At this moment, even he himself could not believe that he had such strength. It was not until the system notified him that the underworld had absorbed the soul that he confirmed that Li Juning was really dead. At the same time, he was also healed by the power of the remnant soul. He looked at the huge palm print again and could not help but mutter, "Did I really do this? Am I that strong?" He even began to doubt himself. If he knew that he was so powerful, why would he be forced into a corner by Li Juning? However, now was not the time for him to be in a daze. Such a big movement would definitely attract the nearby spirit cultivators. Moreover, Leng Shiqi did not think that Li Jucheng would only send Li Juning to kill him, so the most important thing now was to leave. He took a step forward and his figure instantly appeared 100 feet away. Leng Shiqi was surprised again because he did not use the remnant wind lightning steps. Instead he took a light step. How did he cross a distance of 100 feet? Only then did he realize that there seemed to be a very strange feeling between him and the ground under his feet. That feeling could not be described with words. Leng Shiqi frowned slightly. Then, a light flashed under his feet and he appeared 1,000 feet away as if he had traveled through space. What a magical feeling. I clearly did not use any spirit energy, but I can do something that even a rank 7 movement technique can't do. It's as if this land is my world and I can control it at will. Leng Shiqi thought. He pressed his palm down and his body sank into the ground. What made him even more surprised was that he was moving faster underground than on the ground. Being wrapped in the aura of the earth made Leng Shiqi feel even more intimate. In a few breaths he moved several miles away. Someone is coming? However, suddenly, Leng Shiqi sensed 2 powerful spirit energy auras in the range of his Byakugan. They were both in the realm of unity of heaven and man. They were rushing towards the place where he and Li Juning were fighting at an extremely fast speed. They must be people who came to kill him. He had to escape as soon as possible. Leng Shiqi once again summoned the Gu King to help him conceal his aura. While he was underground he was like an earth spirit that moved quickly underground. Soon enough he was 15 kilometers away. Bai Yan's vision could no longer see the aura of the 2 union of heaven and man experts. At this time, the 2 men also came to the place where Leng Shiqi and Li Juning had just fought. They were Li Jugu and Li family's 4th uncle. As soon as they arrived the first thing they saw was the huge palm print. Both of them frowned. 4th uncle said with a tone of disbelief, "Everything within a radius of a few miles has been destroyed. I'm afraid that this place will be barren for the next few hundred years. To be able to do this, one has to be at least at the late stage of the unity of heaven and man realm." But where did a late-stage heaven-man unity realm expert pop out from? Where are Li Juning and Lu Xingji? 4th uncle's cultivation was at the late stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. His words were very convincing. Li Jugu, who was standing opposite him, was also puzzled. We sensed Li Juning's aura not long ago, and there were also violent fluctuations of spiritual power. This means that they were still fighting. Even if someone died they shouldn't have disappeared. This is too unexpected. Could it be that when Li Juning intercepted Lu Xingji he was detected by the experts at the border? 4th uncle's heart was very heavy. Now that Li Juning had inexplicably disappeared, was Leng Shiqi dead or not? No one knew. Li Jugu asked, "4th uncle, what should we do now?" He didn't have a clue either. The 3 of them had split up and used the array formation to monitor a huge area in order to assassinate Leng Shiqi. It seemed that Li Juning had met Leng Shiqi. In the minds of Li Juning and Li Jugu, Li Juning could easily kill Leng Shiqi. Even if Leng Shiqi was not weak, it was impossible for him to escape from Li Juning's hands, because Li Juning's cultivation method and spiritual skills were very special. Although his cultivation was at the early stage of the unity of heaven and man realm, his real combat power was definitely comparable to the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. Moreover, Li Juning also had various treasures that could restrain Leng Shiqi's heavenly fire and illusion, and the life-saving means left by the Li family's ancestor. Therefore they did not think that Li Juning would die in the hands of a spirit cultivator at the middle stage of the gang spirit realm. In this way they were a little confused. 4th uncle pondered for a moment and said, "Since we have decided to kill Lu Xingji, he must die, otherwise there will be endless hidden dangers in the future. Let's not worry about Li Juning. I don't think he will die so easily. Maybe he is in trouble and temporarily hides. Now let's split up to look for Lu Xingji. We must not let him return to the Western Wilderness Prefecture." Li Jugu nodded heavily. The 2 immediately separated and used the formation to continue to look for Leng Shiqi. They would never dream that the reason why Li Juning's aura disappeared was because of the Heavenly Star Gang, the Buddha's palm, and that mysterious power. Everything about Li Juning was wiped out. At this moment, Leng Shiqi was still desperately running away. However, his speed was gradually slowing down. Looking carefully, his gold and silver eyes slowly began to return to normal, and that strange power was also fading. Not long after, he withdrew from that miraculous state. Only then did he find that there was something sticky on his face. When he touched it he found that it was sticky blood. It turned out that unconsciously, Leng Shiqi was bleeding from his 7 orifices. At this moment he suddenly felt as if a bomb had been thrown into his brain. The inhuman pain stimulated his brain and almost made him faint. The primordial spirit in the spiritual sea was also dispirited and was almost on the verge of collapse. His spiritual power was like a river that had been drained for decades, dried up to an unimaginable extent. Lung Shiqi, who was deep in the ground, suddenly stopped. He held his head and his whole body trembled in pain, but he resisted the urge to make a sound. He directly took out a large variety of elixirs from his mustard bracelet and swallowed them all. This pain lasted for 2 to 4 hours before it began to gradually subside. Lung Shiqi was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely and his face was weak. He suddenly recalled that he seemed to have experienced such a situation once before, and it was when he killed the Li brothers in the heavenly tomb. At that time he also used a mysterious power to kill the Li brothers with a flip of his hand. After that, his spiritual power was also exhausted. But this time it was much more serious than that time. So what was that power? Lung Shiqi endured the pain in his head and thought carefully. His eyes flashed, and he suddenly remembered what the shadows in the heavenly tomb had said. 4 words appeared in his mind. The power of law. Chapter 645. The power of law was magical and mysterious. He had touched it by chance in the tomb of heaven, but he had only heard a few words about it. The way he killed Li Juning was similar to the way he killed the Li brothers. And Lung Shiqi found that the two methods seemed to have something to do with earth. To be more precise, it had something to do with gravity. In the tomb of heaven he had used gravity similar to a black hole, which absorbed and crushed everything. Not long ago he had formed a gravity space in which he could control gravity and anti-gravity at will. Even Li Juning, who was in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, could not move. If what he guessed was true, how could he use the power of the law of heaven and earth in the gang spirit realm? He clearly remembered that those Tianyuan realm experts in the tomb of heaven were still groping and trying to comprehend the power of the law of heaven and earth, but they could not get it. How could Lung Shiqi, who was in the gang spirit realm, do something that even Tianyuan realm experts could not do? This was also what confused Lung Shiqi the most. He wanted to try again, but unfortunately he had now withdrawn from that mysterious state. It was like he clearly felt that he was holding something in his hand, but when he looked down there was nothing. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. Of course he had no time to explore now. Although he slowed down a lot, he still had to desperately swim underground for fear of being caught by the other two oneness of heaven and men of the Li family. Lung Shiqi dragged his seriously injured body and kept moving forward. All the strength in his body was almost exhausted. He was basically supporting himself with a strong will. He did not know how long he had been in a daze. Just as his vision became more and more blurred and he was about to faint, he suddenly saw a system prompt. Mansion of the Dead has been upgraded successfully. When Lung Shiqi saw this message, it was as if he had seen a life-saving straw. He used the last of his consciousness to transmit himself into the Mansion of the Dead. As soon as he entered the Mansion of the Dead, Lung Shiqi did not even have time to see the changes of the Mansion of the Dead after the upgrade. He fell to the ground and fainted. His battle with Li Juning had overdrawn too much of his strength, and he had inadvertently triggered the power of the laws of heaven and earth that he was not supposed to master. Coupled with the fact that he had been running for a long time, even if his willpower was strong, he could not hold on any longer. This was especially so when he knew that entering the underworld was equivalent to saving his life. Once he relaxed his mind, all the pain and burden that he had been suppressing would explode out, causing him to faint. However, Lung Shiqi did not know that after he lost consciousness, a thick cloud of pure black gas suddenly appeared and wrapped around him. From afar it looked like a sticky cocoon. Wisps of mysterious energy entered his body and rapidly healed his injuries. About a day later, Lung Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the black energy surrounding him. He was startled at first, but he also found that his injuries had unknowingly healed by more than half. His primordial spirit and spiritual energy had recovered by 60 to 70%. Even his blood essence had been replenished by quite a bit. What is this? Its healing effect is actually so good? Lung Shiqi was puzzled. Originally, in his initial plan, it would take at least 1 or 2 months for him to recover from his injuries. And this was only healing. If he wanted to return to his peak state, it would probably take about 3 months. He had been prepared to recuperate for a long time, but after he woke up from his sleep, he was almost healed. This made him feel pleasantly surprised and a little incredulous. He could not help but think to himself, is this the benefit of the underworld's upgrade? Thinking of this, the black gas around him slowly disappeared. He could finally see the underworld's current appearance. However, Lung Shiqi looked around and suddenly showed a surprised expression. After the underworld's upgrade, it had expanded a lot. Lung Shiqi thought that this upgrade would be the same. In fact, as he expected, he could no longer see the end of the underworld. The radius of the underworld was probably more than hundreds of miles. If it was just the expansion of the underworld, of course, Leng Shiqi would not show such an expression. The main reason was that the underworld was no longer a flat surface. At this moment he was in front of the underworld's gate. The underworld's gate was dozens of feet tall, like a huge towering wall. There were countless bones on the wall, which was extremely terrifying. Looking back, the road to the underworld meandered for an unknown distance, as if it was leading to an abyss. And the river of forgetfulness was hanging upside down, like a river hanging in the 9 heavens. The bridge of helplessness was hidden in a large cloud of gray fog. It was blurry, mysterious, and faintly discernible. Then a mountain range appeared behind him. The mountain range was rugged and was completely shrouded in layers of black wind. Ghosts were everywhere and ghosts were howling. At the top of the mountain range there was a pure black hall. The Hall of Enchantment. The thousands of souls that Leng Shiqi had absorbed not long ago were walking on the road to the underworld. The first batch of souls had already climbed up the mountain range and were walking toward the Hall of Enchantment at the highest point. Leng Shiqi looked at all this in a trance. He murmured, "No wonder it took a day for the underworld to upgrade this time. The changes are really great." These were just the superficial changes of the underworld. Leng Shiqi also found that the system of his territory had also changed. First of all, the number of ghost slaves had changed from 2 to 4, and with the upgrade of the underworld, the strength and ability of the ghost slaves would also be improved. Leng Shiqi immediately called Li Gui over. At a glance, he found that Li Gui's ghost chi was really stronger, and his eyes were more flexible. The aura he exuded was comparable to that of the gang spirit realm. Leng Shiqi was very satisfied that he had one more gang spirit realm expert with strange abilities. Especially now that the Gu King was also injured and could not provide him with an increase in strength, Li Gui made up for it. Thinking that there were still 3 ghost slaves, Leng Shiqi moved his divine thoughts and quickly found Li Juning's soul among the many souls. Seeing Li Juning's muddled soul, Leng Shiqi's expression turned cold. He directly turned Li Juning into a ghost slave. Li Juning immediately knelt on the ground, his head almost buried in the ground. He said, "Master." Seeing Li Juning, who almost killed him, kneeling in front of him, Leng Shiqi could not help but feel a little happy. At the same time, he secretly reminded himself that he could not be careless at all times. He thought that with his strength he was invincible in the gang spirit realm, but there were still too many people in the world who could kill him. As the saying goes, there is always someone better than you. Unless he was standing at the top of the world, he had to keep a vigilant mind at all times. This time he didn't know who had leaked his whereabouts, but he had to find out who it was. Moreover, he did not know why Li Juning could find him. At that time he was flying in the sky, but he was still found. Therefore, all information regarding his combat prowess had long been thoroughly investigated. Fortunately, he had obtained a Buddhist cultivation technique from Tudong. Furthermore, the prizes that he had drawn from the system were still somewhat secretive. The most important point was that this time, if it were not for the substitute doll, he would have been dead. Originally, Leng Shiqi thought that with the wild evil demon blood beast body, the Vajra unbreakable divine skill, and the secret protection of the granite shield, there was almost no one who could break his defense. But in front of a spirit cultivator in the oneness of heaven and men realm, it was still a little weak, so he still had to prepare some life-saving means and trump cards.